Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I think I avoided something really bad. So, there's a small forest near my house, probably about 200 meters by 200 meters, almost a square. There's like a country road on the side that farmers use, and there are like small roads into the forest, so it's divided into 4 parts. It's not remote, but not super busy either. There's a main road next to it, but hardly any cars pass. One part of the forest, the back left section, has always creeped me out ever since I was a kid. The rest of it feels fine, but that one area, something always felt wrong. Anyway, last year, 2024, I was walking along that part of the forest. I was a teenager and walking alone. The place is like safe to take walks and all of that, and just to mention, I live in Slovenia. The path curves a bit so you can't see too far ahead. I turn a corner, and suddenly, there's a man right in front of me, about 6 meters away. I didn't hear him coming at all. No footsteps, no rustling, no nothing. It was like he appeared out of nowhere. He was an adult man, definitely not in his 20s or 30s. He was older. I immediately felt like, oh my god, it's an adult and a weird guy, and I'm a girl, I need to watch out. And I didn't turn my back to him. I just kept walking, super aware of where he was. I looked back, and he was staring at me. I told myself that if he starts walking toward me, I am sprinting straight into the field next to us. Eventually, I turned forward again and I didn't see him anymore. I assumed that he just walked away. But something felt off, so I looked again, and he was in the forest itself, not on the path. He was walking through the woods in a section that people don't usually walk in, especially not during spring or summer when it's full of underbrush. He was walking in the direction that I had come from, and he was holding a roll of duct tape, the thick gray kind that every dad has for some reason. I stared at him. I didn't want to lose sight of him. It felt extremely wrong and creepy. I mean, who the hell brings duct tape into the forest and then hides in the trees? And then walks into the direction back into the forest towards a teenage girl. Then, a little while later, he shows up again, this time riding a small electric scooter that he literally had in the same bushes. Like he came back with duct tape and looked at me. I was looking at him, and then he went back and came back with a goddamn scooter. I was heading back by then, and I knew there was no way I was letting him behind me. I pretended to tie my shoelaces until he went far enough, and then he rode off in the opposite direction. But he kept stopping and looking back at me as he went. There are fields around, so it was very visible where he was after he drove off. I was beyond creeped out. The whole thing felt like a horror movie setup. A teenage girl alone, creepy man in the woods, hiding in the trees with duct tape? I can't stop thinking about how bad that could have turned out if I hadn't been alert. I didn't report it at that time. I don't remember if I even had my phone with me. I was so focused on staying safe that calling the police didn't register. Also, at first, I was like, okay, maybe he was on a walk. But duct tape? Walking in the bushes and trees? That's crazy. For some stupid reason, I didn't tell my parents. I don't even remember what I was thinking. I just know that I didn't feel any fear, anxiety, or panic. But I was just very aware. For some reason, I was thinking, okay, maybe I'm overreacting, overthinking stuff. But I was thinking about it today, and I literally felt so much anxiety and fear because God knows what could have happened. I'm very thankful that I didn't have headphones on because I usually have them on, but this time I didn't for some reason. I don't know if that was my guardian angel or something, but I am just extremely thankful. Hi, I'm not sure if this is the right place to put this, since I don't really frequent this kind of subreddits, but my therapist said that writing and sharing my experiences would be helpful, so here it goes. A few months ago, I went to my local Freshco to get groceries. It was a bit late in the afternoon. I work until 5:30, and when I get off, it's pretty crowded. So I like to wait until it's around 7 before I get in. I don't want to have to deal with that many people, as I do have social anxiety. It was pretty late when I got there, and not too many people in the store anymore. Since it would be closing in an hour, I go about my normal shopping path, grabbing my usual stuff and checking a few things on sale until I made it to the cereal aisle. I was eyeing the oatmeal crisp, my favorites, which had gone up an entire $1. While I was contemplating if it was still worth it for the price, I began to feel an eeriness around my body, that feeling you get when you're being watched, and turning to look down the aisle, lo and behold, there was a guy staring at me. As I looked his way, he quickly snapped his head to the shelf in front of him, which would have been slightly convincing had it not been empty. It may sound ridiculous, but there this creep was, pretending to shop while staring at an empty shelf. I tense up a bit, already feeling my anxiety building up. I thought he was going to ask me for my number or something, but he kept facing forward, looking at the empty shelf. Feeling weirded out by him, I quickly get what I need from this aisle and I move on to the next one. I try to get back to focusing on my shopping, but the man comes into the aisle about a minute after I do, and this time, standing a bit closer to me. Thinking it might all just be in my head, or that he'll get the hint if I move aisles again, I backtracked to the aisle that I was in before, hoping that he would leave me alone. However, I was far too optimistic about that, since he followed me back to that aisle and was only a few feet away from me at this point. My anxiety was through the roof now, so I decided just to leave and come back tomorrow for the rest of the things that I needed. This guy was starting to scare me, and I'd rather not spend the rest of the time here looking over my back for a creeper like him. I quickly pushed my cart to the checkout and pay. Luckily, since it was so late, there wasn't a line, and I was able to check out rather quickly. But the downside to that meant that he was able to check out quickly too. But in my anxious mind, all I could think about was getting into my car where no one could get to me and then driving home. And I did just that after checking out. I power walked to my car, threw the groceries in the back seat, and then drove off. Of course, I had only got about half of what I needed, but more than enough to make it till tomorrow afternoon, when I could just come back again and buy the rest. There should be no reason why that guy would be there tomorrow, since he was shopping today, so I thought that I could rest easy. The next day, I went back to Freshco to get the frozen peas and microwavable pizzas that I was planning on getting yesterday. I also decided that I did in fact want my oatmeal crisp, even if the price was more expensive. I walked into the store and immediately went to the cereal aisle once more for my prize, only to stop dead in my tracks when I turned into it. He was there again, in the exact same spot where I first noticed him staring at me. I quickly turned the corner. The oatmeal crisps were expensive anyways. I decided to just get the frozen food and leave before the guy spotted me. I quickly passed the aisle he was in and quickly grabbed the things that I needed before heading to the checkout again. There was no line, but the issue was, since there was no one else there, when the man turned the corner, he noticed me instantly. I had been looking over my shoulder a bit to keep an eye out for him, but now that I knew he saw me, I turned my head back quickly, paid for my food, and quickly walked away once more back to my car. I did not have the nerve to look behind me when I shoved my food into my car and I drove off, which might have been my biggest mistake. I didn't pay attention to anything but getting home, thinking that I would be safe there. But over the next few days, I realized my mistake. I started seeing him hanging around near my street, sometimes late at night across the street from me, just sitting there on the ground, staring at my house. I, of course, called the police, but since there wasn't enough evidence and they didn't spot him when they arrived, they said that they couldn't do much, but that they would send a car to patrol my neighborhood more frequently. After giving its description, they told me that they would keep an eye out for him. But that did little to calm my nerves. The more prominent patrols did work, however, because I started to see him less and less around my street once the police started frequenting it. I had opened up to my friends about this, and one of them made a good point, saying that if he was actively avoiding the police, chances are that he knows what he was doing is wrong and probably has experience with this kind of thing. But according to the police, they don't have anyone matching his description as a known offender. But seeing him less did calm my nerves a bit. But for the time being, I decided to order my groceries online. Is it more expensive? Yes, but I would rather be safe and poor than putting myself into potential danger just to save a few bucks. Things started to become normal again, not like how it was before, but I had stopped peering out my windows at night in fear that he was out there and was able to sleep a bit more comfortably again. But over the span of 2 weeks, the police patrols have become less frequent until they stopped altogether. I was afraid that he would come back after realizing that the police were no longer patrolling the area. But so far, I haven't seen him yet. Are there any good tips for home security that I can do? Because I am no longer feeling safe again, and I'm not sure that I will anytime soon. Hey everyone, I'm posting here because something really unsettling happened recently, and I would appreciate any advice or thoughts. I also don't want to get too specific with location details, so I'm just saying the general area. On the night of April 28, 2025, my mom and I were walking home from dinner in Victoria, BC at around 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. We don't have a car, so we were walking along the side of the road when a white SUV-type vehicle showed up behind us. We moved over to let it pass, but instead, it stayed right behind us, inching along slowly. And as soon as that happened, we were a little freaked out. Continuing, when we turned onto the main street near our home, the vehicle turned with us and parked across the street. The driver didn't exit or turn the car off, he just sat there. It made us uncomfortable enough that instead of going straight home, we waited for the bus and took that to avoid revealing where we lived. Over an hour later, we returned. The SUV was still there, now turned off and empty. As we passed it on foot and we were coming close to our home, we were kind of behind this van parked in front of our place, so we couldn't really see the driver get back in or where he came from. We just heard the car unlock and start up again. We were super freaked out, so we stayed hiding behind the van. At this point, I had mentioned to my mom that if we ducked down slightly, the driver wouldn't be able to see us go into our home. So we did that, and I made the mistake of turning off our porch light and then turning it back on. A minute after that, the car drove away, and since then, we haven't had any problems. Please note that we have had suspicious behavior before, like my bike getting stolen from our backyard, and even people going into our backyard at night. Additional notes was that he was a white male, like over 50 years old, with dark gray peppery hair, short but slightly overgrown. I only saw his side profile, but he looked overweight with a fuller face. He had no beard or glasses, and from the looks of it, he was wearing a t-shirt. I'm not sure about the color. About the car, it was a white SUV type, maybe Jeep. Not like the big vans, but like a regular stubby car. It looked like a really nice model, and probably more on the expensive side. Thick black front grille, like the heavy bars on Jeeps. Orange headlights. Very quiet engine, so it could possibly be a hybrid or electric. And I specifically remember seeing that he had a document piece of paper on the dashboard sitting up. But I do not remember anything about the license plate. If anyone has any advice on the information that I provided, that would be amazing. I'm really looking for an answer if this was truly someone following us, and if we could possibly be being stalked, or if we are being dramatic. And any deets about what type of car that it was would be amazing. Oh, and one more thing that I wanted to mention is that I did end up looking at articles if there were any weirdos in the past in our area. And there was one article, 1 to 2 years ago, about a lurker ending up in people's backyards or following people. Hi, Miss Creepy Tales. I hope that you're doing well. I'm sending you this story in hopes that you can share this with people and I can get some feedback on my situation. I'm male and I'm 24 and I would like to keep my name anonymous. I feel a bit awkward writing this story because this is my first time doing something like this, so if there are any mistakes or if things aren't very clear, please forgive me. I'm doing my best. I want to talk about something that I am currently going through. I'm ashamed to share this to my own family and friends because I just don't think that it's normal for a guy to go through this. But I also feel like I have to tell someone because I am feeling anxious and I'm feeling like I'm about to lose my mind. Please don't judge me. So here it goes. I think my roommate is stalking me. It all started in university. I was still living with my parents and I had to travel 3 hours back and forth every single day just to get to uni. It was really a hassle because of the traffic and just the general stress of traveling around my area. When I get to school, I'm already tired, and when I get home, I'm also too tired to do anything else. I was not having a great time at all. I decided that I needed to do something about it. I talked to my parents, and they said that they would support me financially if I wanted to move to a place closer to uni, but they gave me a certain budget, and if the place I found cost more than that, then I would have to figure things out myself. My parents were great, but we just didn't have a lot of money, which is understandable. I agreed, and I set out searching for places and even talked to some of my friends at school. Unfortunately, all the places were above the budget and I was not sure what to do. I didn't want to take a part-time job at that point, because there were a lot of schoolwork to be done and I don't think it would work well for me. I was seriously considering just canceling the whole idea. But 2 days later, I got a text from a guy named Aiden. Let's just call him that for the sake of the story. He was talking about how he heard I was looking for a place. He said that he was also thinking of doing the same since he also lived a bit far. He explained that if we live together, we can halve the cost. I thought that it was perfect and it was the best idea ever. I even scolded myself a little for not thinking about getting a housemate. Fast forward, we agreed, found a place, and then moved in together. And to be honest, it was amazing. Gone are the early morning stress from traveling, and when I got home, I had the energy to study and finish homework and papers. Aiden was also great. He wasn't lazy, he was a clean person, he wasn't greedy, he always shared his food and snacks, and we genuinely got along. I thought he was a great housemate. Until he wasn't. It was 6 months in when I started noticing some weird things. One day, Aiden asked me about the comic book that I was reading. I responded, we talked about it, and that was the end of the conversation. But I realized I never mentioned that to him or to anyone, and the comic book I was reading was placed inside the drawer in my nightstand. It wasn't like it was left around the house or even out and about in my room. So, how did he know about it? I brushed it off thinking maybe I did mention it to him and I just forgot. Another instance was that one day at uni, we had an event and we were required to wear a certain color to represent our teams. Aiden asked me if I wanted to borrow a shirt with my assigned color since he says that I don't have that shirt. I responded with, I don't? I don't even know what color shirts I have exactly. So when I checked, he was right. This was seriously starting to freak me out. Why does this guy know so much about my personal belongings? I'm not a messy guy and I never leave my things out or leave my door just open and free for everyone to look into. My clothes are also in my drawers. I was getting so confused and freaked out, I've started becoming hyper aware when Aiden was around. And I have noticed that he stares at me a lot. I know that sounds a bit vain, but I'm serious. He stares a bit way too long and a bit way too intense. The last straw was when one Friday, I got a message from my grandma asking me to come home on the weekend. She wanted me to help her with something at home. I was busy when I got the message, so I opened it, read it, and I just closed it, despite the fact that I haven't replied yet. And just like the klutz that I am, I forgot about it. And my day went on as normal, and I went to sleep. The next day, I wake up and I go to the kitchen to grab some hot chocolate when Aiden asked me what time I was leaving for my grandma's. I was confused at first, but then I remember the text message. The thing is, I am 200% sure that I did not tell Aiden or anyone about it since I myself forgot about the whole thing. The message was already open, so it's not like it was on my screen or something, and even if it was, how would Aiden be able to see it? I lost it. I asked Aiden how he knows, and he gave me a nervous giggle and a stupid excuse how he saw it on my screen. I screamed at him and I told him how that was not possible, and I was trying to pressure him into telling me why he knows personal things about me and if he is snooping around my room when I'm not there or when I'm asleep. He said no, and then he made a dumb excuse in how he needs to go, and then he just left. I packed a bag and I'm spending my whole weekend with my grandma. I made sure to lock my room and I'm here just thinking on what to do. I can't move out yet. There's still 2.5 months left on the lease, and I'm 100% sure that I am not extending the lease after this occurrence. I'm definitely moving out, even if it means that I have to go back to my daily 3-hour travels. But I'm not sure how to proceed with the remaining 2.5 months. Does anyone have any experience with this kind of situation? If you do, what did you do? Please, I would really appreciate any feedback about this. I'll be seeing Aiden again on Monday, and I'm not sure how to interact with him. And I'll update you when something happens. Thank you so much for reading my story. Before I tell my story, I just want to say that I'm aware of how dumb it is to do stuff like this, and I probably won't be doing this for a long time after what happened a few months ago. Anyway, I just really needed to post this because I don't know what else to tell. About a half a year ago, I had the scariest experience of my life. For context, I'm a dumb teenage boy who sneaks out every now and then just to walk around at night. I find something very peaceful walking around after dark, but my parents have never let me stay out past sunset. So, for about a year, whenever school gets hard or just life in general gets stressful, I sneak out and I just walk around for about 2 hours or so. Anyway, the night that I'm talking about began with me deciding to go for another 2 a.m. ritual. I grabbed a sweatshirt, got on my shoes, and once I was outside and hopped the fence to freedom. After I was safely away from my neighborhood, I took one of my usual routes, which is cutting through another neighborhood and walking onto a winding road, where I then walk down the middle of it and head towards a circle of shops and fast food restaurants. I was probably there for a solid chunk of time, just walking in the loop and ending up sitting on a bench. At some point, I picked up a plastic spoon on the ground and I started to grind it against the pavement until the spoon part was half gone out of boredom. This is important later. I was chilling there for a bit before I decided to walk around a bit more, and I eventually ended up at a park like 10 minutes away from my neighborhood, where I usually end off the night just staring off into the sky. The park itself creeps me out sometimes because at night, there's a huge ring of trees surrounding all sides of you, and anyone could watch from the woods. Anyway, shit starts to get real here because I'm staring up into existence, feeling like a philosopher while I'm laying on one of those table benches, when I hear an old man whistle. I probably shot up because I had never had another human interaction on these walks. And then I see this old man, dimly illuminated by a streetlight, are the only entrance of the park. I had seen him before. He's this tall, skinny white guy that walks around our town all day, and I would honestly think he was homeless if he wasn't wearing the same fancy button-up and cargo pants every day. Me and my mom have talked about him, and we think that he's mentally disabled and probably lives with a caretaker. I had an interaction with him once about a year ago that I was walking home in broad daylight when I passed the man who was at that time sitting on a bench. The dude just looks at me and says, "Jesus loves you," with a weird little smirk on his face. I responded with an awkward, "I know," even though I'm an atheist and didn't really think much of it. Anyway, back to the park at night. I just stare at him in that empty parking lot, probably way longer than I should have, because he was already creeping me the hell out. I imagine we were staring at each other for a really long time before he slowly starts walking towards me. And at this point, I am frozen in fear because why the fuck is this old white geezer out with me at like 3 a.m. in an empty park? I am standing up at this point when he gets close to me and just gives me this cheeky grin like he knows something that I don't yet, and I'm still just gawking at him like a fucking buffoon. Have you ever scoffed at a book or movie when the main character is frozen in fear? Well, I have, and I never will again, because at this point I'm more frozen than I have ever been in my life. At some point, after probably like 10 seconds of awkward standing, he just kinda half pats and half grabs my shoulder and reaches into his pocket to pull out a plastic spoon. The same plastic spoon that I was holding about an hour ago at the shop plaza. He just kinda tucks it in my front sweatshirt pocket, and I guess something just makes my mind snap out of my frozen stance because I absolutely fucking book it to the public bathroom and I lock the door. I'm now in this dimly lit bathroom in the middle of the night, and I'm guessing at this time it was past 3 in the morning. I assumed that maybe he would leave once he saw me in my state of panic, but honestly, I don't think he ever left. I ended up looking closer at the plastic spoon, and it was altered. Have you ever seen that one viral AI-generated image where it looks completely normal at a glance, but you can't identify a single thing? If not, just search up the words, "Name one thing in this image." Now, imagine that, except the word carved onto a plastic spoon, but you can't read it or even identify any of the letters. I think that I sat in that locked bathroom for over an hour, just contemplating every single decision that I have made in the past year that led up to that nightmare that I was in at that moment. To be clear, I had no phone or any way of contacting someone because my parents installed Life 360 on my phone and they can see my location whenever. I also had no watch or access to the outside to tell the time. I ended up gaining the courage to unlock the door and just absolutely rocket myself towards the exit of the park. And before I turned the corner, I looked back for a second and I saw a figure sitting on the bench that was right next to the bathroom. This senile old man had waited outside for an hour just to see me one more time. I'm being completely honest when I say that I held a full sprint until I got to my neighborhood, where I caught my breath behind a bush and then snuck back in my house. I haven't gone out at night since that experience, and I don't know if I'll ever sneak out again. I still have the spoon buried somewhere in my wardrobe, but I haven't looked at it in months. Sometimes, I think about how long he was following me, and if it was an isolated incident, or if he had been stalking me on other late-night trips. I would love to hear your guys' opinion on the matter, unless you're here to lecture me about my actions because trust me, I've already learned. Anyway, creepy old man that was stalking me that night, let's not meet again. I'm a young male college student living abroad, and something happened last night that really shook me. A guy waited in the lobby, and when I nodded at him as a polite gesture as I walked past him in the lobby, he followed me into the elevator but didn't press any floor button himself. He stayed in the elevator with me the whole ride, and while in there, he repeatedly invited me to his room in a way that feels like he was plotting something, saying things like, "You are so," and then he kept pressing after I said no. He also asked if I lived alone and if I lived on that floor, which made me really uncomfortable. I told him that I live with my friends, just to avoid giving away too much, and before I left the elevator, I said something with exposed emotion, disgust, uneasiness, and maybe even some fear, because I was creeped out and I regretted that I didn't just stare at him and stood my ground. I don't feel safe walking alone around my place now, and I am planning to report it to the building security since there's CCTV. Has anyone else dealt with something like this? How should I handle it if he tries to approach me again? Should I throw hands with a potential creep? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Edit. I reported and checked the CCTV footage, and the security team replied not to worry too much, as the condo has a lot of CCTV and high security. Well, I guess there's nothing more that I could do, except move on, I guess. Thank you for all your concern, and you guys stay safe too. So I was telling a coworker the story, and she suggested that I share it here. Sorry in advance if I ramble. I tend to remember random details every time that I tell it. Back when I was about 17, around 2009, I worked as a courtesy clerk at a grocery store, bagging groceries and bringing in carts. My mom and sister also worked there, so the place felt like family. Most of the guys that I worked with were protective of me, which honestly was a blessing, because I got hit on by older men all the time. My boss would even follow me home some nights just to make sure that no creeps were trailing me. But one incident, though, has stuck with me. It was an insanely hot day. I'd just finished wrangling a mountain of carts and ducked into the little pizzeria corner of the store to cool down. Out of nowhere, this man in his 20s or 30s came up and handed me his number. He didn't say much, if anything, just walked off. I was too overheated to react. But the next day, a silver minivan pulled up to me outside. I noticed baby shoes hanging from the rearview mirror. The man tried talking to me, and I remember cutting him off and saying, "I'm 17 and I have a boyfriend." Usually, that scared men away. This one didn't. That night, near closing time, my cashier whispered that someone was watching us. I turned, and I saw the same guy from the minivan standing around the corner just staring. I told my night manager, who immediately opened the office door while counting tills to keep an eye on things. The guy eventually left the store, but just waited outside. My manager ended up following me home again that night. A few days later, my aunt randomly texted me, which was unusual because we hardly talked. She sent me to a link to a Craigslist missed connections post and asked if it was about me. And it was. The post said something like this.
Saw you working at the grocery store. You were cute. You wore a bow in your hair, suspenders hanging from your shorts, a bunch of wristbands, and had bright colored hair. Your name tag said Garrett. I'm 40, and I would like to meet up.
The Garrett part really freaked me out because Garrett wasn't me. My coworkers and I used to switch name tags sometimes just to mess with customers and see their reactions. So not only was this guy watching me closely enough to describe my entire outfit, but he also memorized the fake name that I just happened to be wearing that day. I ran to my day manager and I showed him the post, and he immediately replied to it with, "Too young for you," from a parent. After that, things got weirder. I'd see the same silver van around, but sometimes I wasn't sure if it was even the same guy. Once, I rushed inside after spotting it, and suddenly the man was already following me down an aisle. There was no way he could have parked that fast and then gotten inside. When I screamed, he bolted before anyone else saw him. The police got involved and gave me an escort home every night for a week. Eventually, I got transferred to a different store in a different town, and I never saw the van or that man again. Being hit on by creepy older men unfortunately never stopped, but that Craigslist post still gives me chills to this day. I wish I could find it again. It was so unsettling reading how he described me. So, to the man who wrote that Craigslist post about a 17-year-old girl, let's not meet. In 2008, I was 16 and living in a small town where you'd see the same faces over and over. One of them was this man in his mid-30s, scruffy beard, worn-out jacket, someone I'd always assume was just a local drifter. Then, I started noticing him more. He would be outside the shop when I went in after school, leaning against the fence across from the school gates, or walking a little way behind me on my route home. Always just far enough to make me second-guess myself, but always there. One Sunday afternoon, I was walking into town to meet a mate when I saw him at the bus stop. As I passed, he fell into step beside me. "All right, Ryan," he said. I froze for a second. I have never told him my name. He asked if I still lived up by the church, and that was where my street was, but I had never mentioned it to him. Then came more questions. "You usually get back from school around 3:30, right? You still playing football on Tuesdays? Does your mom still work at the post office?" The way he said it wasn't casual conversation. It was like he was checking his facts. I told him that I had to go and I sped up. He just smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll catch you another time." A few nights later, after a football practice, it was dark and I was walking the quiet route home, and from behind me, I heard that same voice. "Not many people out tonight. It's a good night for a walk." He was standing under a streetlight, hands in his pockets, just grinning. And then he said, "Your bedroom's the one at the back of the house, isn't it?" I didn't answer. I just walked as fast as I could without running. And after that, I started changing routes, times, and everything. I never saw him again after a couple of weeks, but every time that I walk home alone in the dark, I half expect to hear his voice behind me. A few years later, I was flicking through the local paper and I froze. There was his face staring back at me. The article said that he had been arrested for assaulting an elderly woman in her own home. They had a mugshot, and it was exactly how I remembered him. Scruffy beard, dead eyes, and that same unsettling grin. Hello everyone, I'm 32 and female, but this story happened to me when I was around 14 years old. Or maybe younger, I can't remember exactly. I have been on this subreddit for a while now, and I am fascinated and a bit sad with how many creepy experiences people go through on a daily basis. So I thought that I would also like to share my own experience. I am the only child in my family, and my parents, despite being supportive and good people, were also very busy. They would take on overtime and extra work just to earn extra cash, and not that I was upset about it. I understood that we needed the money, but this also meant that I was left alone at home multiple times a week. I was raised to be responsible, so my parents never worried about me, and our sweet neighbor, an old lady who knew about my situation, She would check on me from time to time. She even told me that if I wanted to, I can hang out with her in her house and we would have snacks and stuff. I would do that sometimes, but I would just stay at home and do my homework, then watch some movies most of the time. My mom would leave food in the fridge for me to heat up, or when she doesn't feel like cooking, she leaves me money enough for pizza and the tip. One day, on a day my mom didn't want to cook, she left me a note and money on the kitchen counter saying that I can order pizza that night. I was excited because I was actually craving for some. I called the pizza place, ordered, and just sat on our living room couch watching TV while I waited for it. After maybe 20 to 30 minutes or so, I can't remember, but I heard our doorbell ring. I looked through the peephole and I saw that it was the pizza guy. So I opened it. I took the pizza from his hands, handed him the money, told him how much his tip was so he can deduct that too. He was trying to get the change for me, painfully slowly, and while doing that, he started asking me questions. He asked things like my age, my name, if I were home alone, and I lied and I gave him a random name and age, and I told him that my mom was in the shower. Something about him was giving me the creeps. He looked clean-shaven, wearing his pizza place uniform, and he looked to be around his early 30s. But just his general demeanor was creeping me out. And then he finally got my change, handed it to me while making sure that our hands touched, and he had this weird expression on his face as he said, "You're so beautiful." I just said thanks and I quickly closed the door and locked it. I was young, but as I mentioned earlier, I get left home alone a lot, so my parents made sure to teach me about stranger danger and all of that. I wasn't a dumb child at all. That was raising a lot of red flags for me. But since the ordeal was over, I just shrugged it off, ate my pizza while watching my movie, and I went on with my day. When my parents arrived, I have already forgotten the whole thing and I didn't tell them. The next day, it was the same thing, just me at the house, but this time I had some food to reheat, so I didn't have to order anything. An hour after I got home, I hear our doorbell ring. I was confused. I was not expecting any guest, and our neighbor, the sweet old lady, usually just called to let me know she has snacks and stuff that she wants me to eat. I had no idea who it was, so I slowly walked to the door and peeped, and to my shock, it was the pizza guy from yesterday. He was holding a box, but I did not order anything at all. My parents weren't also the type to order for me. They would let me do that myself. The man probably heard me walk there because he started saying, "Pizza delivery." I answered and I said, "We didn't order any pizza. I think you got the wrong house." He then answered, "Really? The address on the order was for this house." And again, I tried explaining that we didn't order anything. The man paused for a bit, and then he said, "Well, don't worry about it. I'll just give this pizza to you for free. Just open the door to get it." I told him that I wasn't interested, that I'm full, and just to eat it by himself. He then said that he can do that, but then we would have to share it since he can't finish it by himself, and also as an apology for bothering me. It was obvious that this grown man wants me to open the door and let him in. I told him no, and he actually started twisting the door handle. I screamed, and I ran into my room and I locked myself in there. I hid under the sheets and I don't know when it happened, but I fell asleep. I woke up later when I heard a car pulling up the driveway, signaling that my parents were home from work. I went downstairs, and my mom asked me why there was an empty pizza box on the doorstep. I broke down, and I cried and I told them about everything that happened, even the one from the day before. My mom and dad were furious. My dad called the pizza place and complained to the manager, in which the manager apologized and said that he will take care of it. My dad then called his workplace and said that he would take the next day off. He didn't explain why, but he said he had a family emergency. But I was just excited to have my dad home, really. The next day went on as normal. I went to school, got home, and I locked the door. Now, my family only had one car. So since my mom went to work and my dad stayed at home, there was no car in the driveway because my mom took it with her. So it seemed that there was no adult in the house again. The reason why I'm explaining this is because after an hour from when I got home, I heard a doorbell ring again. My dad and I were in the kitchen making sandwiches when this happened. My stomach just drops. I was sure of who this person was. My dad automatically had a frown on his face, so I think we were thinking of the same thing. He whispered to me to check the peephole first and see if it's the same man that has been bothering me. I did. I checked, and I nodded yes to him. This time, the guy wasn't wearing his normal pizza place shirt. He was wearing a different shirt. My dad swiftly opened the door, which probably startled the guy, and in one swift motion, he grabbed the guy by his collar. I would like to add that my dad is a big muscular man, and not the one you see in gyms, but he is a blue-collar kind of guy. He's big and he's strong. So he holds this guy by his collar and just yells at him, asking him questions on why he is bothering his underage daughter. The guy is clearly flustered and stuttering while making up fake excuses. I can't really remember what excuses he said. My dad's yelling and just the whole commotion makes some of the neighbors start coming out of their houses to see what's going on, even my sweet old neighbor. My dad then threatens the man, and then he throws him on the ground. The man scrambles and runs to a car parked nearby, and then he speeds off. My dad said that he regrets not holding on to him and calling the cops, but he says that he was swallowed by his anger and that he couldn't think straight. And the good thing is that our sweet old neighbor was smart enough to get the man's license plate, and my dad called the police and reported it. I don't think they ever caught the guy, but the good thing is that I never saw him again. So yeah, this story might not be the creepiest on this subreddit, but it was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. I can only hope that what happened to the man made him stop what he was doing, because I would not want for anyone else to experience what I did. So, creepy stalker pizza guy, let's not meet again. So to start off, I would like to apologize for some grammatical issues. English is not my first language, and for context, I'm a male. It happened when I was in 5th grade, and because I live in Kyrgyzstan, our school system is not the same as in America. I had first shift. That means that I had school from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. I was the kid that was always heading back to my house after school, but I was always walking with my 2 best friends because we lived near each other. After we got to the point where we would be heading off to different directions, we said goodbye to each other and then we walked in our own directions. It was autumn, so I was dressed in a school uniform with a jacket and a hat. It was quite chilly. We had 7 entrances to the building. Mine was the 7th one. I was living in a good neighborhood in the center of town, so when I started approaching the door to the 7th entrance, I noticed a man that was standing near it. To clarify, on the porch. I had a feeling when I looked at him, telling me not to enter the building with him. And then he looked at me with his empty eyes, and I was scared a bit. So he turned his head at my direction, looked at me, and then entered the building. My mom always told me not to enter the building with other people, so I stayed on the porch, trying to hear if he took the elevator so that I could enter the building alone. As I heard the elevator go up, I entered the building, and thank God, no one was there. I touched the elevator button, waiting. I entered the elevator and I pressed on the 8th floor. As I was going up, I heard the fast footsteps on the staircase because the elevator was near it, so you could hear anyone going up the stairs. It was sounding like he was running, and now I was panicking because I didn't know what to do. I knew he was going to approach me as the doors opened. I started banging on the door, pressing our doorbell. But unfortunately, my older brother was always slow at opening it. So as I was waiting, I looked at the staircase and I saw that man running full speed looking at me. He was so tall, he was like skipping 3 stairs, and I was scared as hell. I started banging. Meanwhile, he was looking at me as he was running. My brother finally opened the first door. But the story doesn't end here. I flew inside, locked the doors, and I told my brother about the situation. Also to mention, I know every neighbor in our 7th building, so I never saw that man. He was also looking not good, a bit unkempt. My brother, who was 16 at that time, 185 centimeters and also a wrestler, opened the door and then approached the man, questioning him about who he is. The man started getting aggressive, and also he grabbed his phone and started acting like he was talking with someone. The man started being rude, aggressive, and in fact my brother was calm asking questions. My brother said to him that he is scaring people who are living here. The man didn't care and he just started cursing. My brother just closed the doors fast and told me to be careful. I'm still scared of entering that building after this story. I don't eat ice cream or popsicles, nor gelato or froyo, or any other kind of frozen dessert of the sort. It's not because I don't like the taste or a dietary restriction, but I feel uncomfortable having them because of something that happened to me when I was younger that turned me away from it. When I, female, was 8, just like any other kid my age, loved ice cream, and I always got excited when I heard the ice cream truck come. So, when I heard it that day, I rushed to my mom's side and I put on my best puppy dog eyes to ask her for ice cream. She sighed, washed her hands because she was cooking, and then took out a $5 bill from her purse and then handed it to me. I said thank you, grabbed my prize, and then ran outside, seeing a few other kids already lined up to the now stopped truck getting their own ice cream. I stared at the menu on the side of the truck, wondering what I could get for $5. I decided on getting a chocolate cone with brownie bits on top. When my turn came, I noticed it wasn't the old man that usually gives us ice cream. It was a younger guy. He had a big smile on his face as I walked up to the truck. "Hi there," he said, in a very cheery, inviting way. "And what's your name?" "I'm Cindy." Not my real name, but I'm just gonna use it for this story. "What a pretty name for such a pretty girl. Would you like some ice cream, Cindy?" "Yes, please," I told him. "Wow, you're so polite," the man said. "Very ladylike of you, Cindy. What kind of ice cream would you like?" "Chocolate, please, with some brownie bits on top," I tell him. That's a great choice. That's my favorite too. The man says while he makes my ice cream. Is that your house there, Cindy? He said, nodding over to my house. I nodded. Was that a dumb decision? Yes. But when I was younger, it wasn't as widespread to teach your kids about stranger danger. The man then finished making my scoop and handed it to me. My first reaction was to stare at the 2 scoops in front of me. I panicked a bit because I didn't order a second scoop and I don't have the money for that. Excuse me, I didn't. It's okay. The man cut me off and then he said, I gave you an extra one because I think you're very pretty, Cindy. It's gonna be our little secret, okay? He said with a wink, and I just smiled and nodded, giving him the $5 and I take my ice cream, just happy because I got an extra scoop. I waved goodbye to the ice cream man and I walked back inside. Thinking back, the man didn't drive off until I was inside. He just waited there. I don't know what he was doing since my back was turned to him as I went inside, but I can only assume that he was watching me. So, I went inside with my prize, thoroughly enjoying it, when my mother came in the room and asked, 2 scoops. Did you save up yourself? She said as she ruffled my hair. Very responsible little girl. I shook my head no. I said, The new ice cream man gave me a free scoop. He said that I was pretty. Her eyebrows scrunched and her lips pursed a bit. I realized now that she was concerned about the situation, seeing it weird how a fully grown man was calling an 8-year-old that he never met before pretty. Tell you what, Cindy, next time you want ice cream, you tell me and I'll get it for you, okay? My mom said. The request seemed odd, but if I got my ice cream, I didn't really care. But what about the flavors? I asked her, wanting to get good ice cream. There were always bad ones in the ice cream truck, and I did end up getting a SpongeBob popsicle. They tasted like Pepto-Bismol. My mom then reassured me. I've been raising you for 8 years. I know you're a chocolate girl. I shrugged and agreed, more focused on my ice cream than that conversation. Mom wanted to get my ice cream instead? Makes life easier for me. So the next time that I heard the ice cream truck, I told my mother, and she went to go buy my ice cream, and all was well in the world for a time. And it kept like that for about a week. When the gifts started arriving, the mailbox for our house was by the road, and every once in a while, there would be a gift inside, a cute bow or some stickers. Once, there were little dolls stuffed into the mailbox. I was excited to see these things, because who wouldn't? But my mother seemed to grow more and more upset with each gift that came, and she would throw them away rather than let me have them. It took a while, but my mother put 2 and 2 together, realizing that the gifts only came on days when the ice cream truck came by our street. So the next time the truck came by, she went out to talk to the man. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could tell that they were yelling. And after that, my mother didn't get ice cream from that truck anymore, just buying it at the store instead. Whenever she heard the music from the truck, she would simply stand by the window and watch. And when she saw the man get out of his van to our mailbox, she and my dad came out of the house and confronted him. My dad was really aggressive that day, pushing and shoving the ice cream man back into his truck. And after that, the ice cream truck didn't come to our neighborhood anymore. But the gift still came, so my mother decided to spend the day looking at the mailbox. She told me when I was older what she saw, the ice cream man, out of uniform, just driving up to our mailbox in a regular old car and putting the gift in. At that point, she had had it. She called the police about it and together, along with my father, decided to file a restraining order against the guy. It was a lot harder to find him then than they initially thought because ice cream trucks weren't part of some big company or organization. They were individually owned freelance things that people can buy and do. All you needed was a vendor's license. But eventually, the police did find the man and gave him the order to stay away. It might be a bit of an overreaction, but after that, I never had any ice cream. The part about anyone can do it and didn't even need a background check to do a job that primarily revolves around being near children just feels wrong to me. So if you are ever getting ice cream from a van, be careful. You never know who is on the other side. I'm reading a lot of creepy stories here, and every time I think, I have to tell what's happened to me that night. So here we go. I just want to say that English is not my native language, so I'll do my best, but I'm sorry if I make some mistakes. I'm a female, and this story happened a couple of years ago when I was maybe 18. We used to party at a friend's house a lot during the weekends, and this night, the party wasn't in the city that I lived in, so I and a couple of friends need to take a shared taxi to go home. I was the one who lived the furthest away, so the last one in the taxi. As many times before, we arrived to the roundabout at the start of my street, and I told the taxi driver, "It's my street, I can leave here. Thank you, and good night." And then I start to walk, a little bit drunk, not gonna lie, and I just put my headphones to listen to some music. I feel safe in my own street, but it's a very long street, so I have to walk maybe 3 minutes to my house. 30 seconds after I start, the taxi comes back next to me and the driver lowers his window. I took my headphones out and then he said, "Hey, come back to the car. 3 men started following you and they just put hoods on." First, I find it weird. It's my street and it's a very safe neighborhood, so it doesn't make any sense to me. I look back and then I froze. I saw 3 men wearing black or at least dark clothes and hoods walking very fast in my direction. I jumped in the car and the taxi driver dropped me off to my door. I talked about it the next day to my father and then I told him, "Maybe they just want to steal my phone or something?" And I remembered him answering me, "If it was just to steal a smartphone, they wouldn't put hoods on." And still, it scares me when I think of it. So first, to the taxi driver who stayed vigilant when he dropped off a young girl, thank you so much. You're my hero. And second, to the 3 psychopaths who decided to follow an 18-year-old girl with hoods, let's not meet and fuck off. Some horror stories don't involve ghosts, monsters, or curses. Sometimes, the scariest thing is someone with a smile. This story takes place in Nagoya, a city in central Japan, known for its castles, industry, and vast suburban sprawl. Nagoya blends modern development with long stretches of quiet residential roads. And if you're driving alone in one of those outer districts, especially at dusk, Well, sometimes the scariest thing is who's watching you when you stop at a light. This happened about 15 years ago. I was driving home after shopping at a large suburban complex outside of Nagoya. I'd bought a lot of clothes, groceries, some small electronic devices, and I was in a good mood. I was humming to myself behind the wheel, and I was relaxed and with my bags full of plans. It was a clear afternoon, just starting to turn golden. I pulled up to a red light, and that's when I noticed him. A man, maybe my age, clean cut. He was walking along the pavement, and he stopped when he saw my car. He smiled, then casually walked right up to my window and then motioned for me to roll it down. Something about him seemed overly familiar, like he expected me to cooperate. I know it was careless, but back then, I didn't think much of it. So I cracked the window about 10 centimeters and then asked, "Yes?" But then, his arm lunged through the gap. He reached inside and then started grabbing for the door lock. I screamed, loud, and he froze then laughed like nothing had happened. "Hey, sorry, I saw your plate. Said you got his car in Owari Komaki? Thought you might be heading past Komaki Station. I figured that I would hitch a ride." And just then, the light turned green. I snapped the window shut and I said, "Sorry, I'm in a hurry." And then I drove off. In the mirror, I saw him yelling. He picked something off the ground and then threw it at the road, and his smile had twisted into open rage. About 10 minutes later, I hit another red light, this time much closer to home. And there he was, again. He knocked on my window hard. Somehow, he had followed me. Back then, Nagoya still had plenty of roaming taxis. He must have gotten into one and told the driver to tail my car. This time he was shouting, slamming his hand against the glass. "Get out of the car!" I should have driven away, but instead, I pulled over and I got out. Even now, I can't explain why. I know it was so stupid. He then stormed over furious. "You did pass Komaki Station. Why didn't you stop?" I was panicking, but then I remembered something, anything, to put some distance between us. This is my dad's car," I stammered. He always says that I can't give rides to strangers." He blinked. His face shifted. "Oh, that's it? Well, why didn't you just say so?" And then he laughed. "Man, I wasted taxi fare for nothing. All right, how about you make it up to me? Buy me a drink or something?" My skin went cold, and my voice came out without thinking. "My mom always told me don't treat strangers and don't accept anything from them either." He then smirked, stepped closer and said, "Wow, strict family, huh?" And then his eyes darkened. "Honestly, when I first saw you in the car, I thought maybe we could have a little fun. You know, go somewhere private, spend the night somewhere." He looked me up and down and then added, "So, you a virgin?" I could barely breathe. I forced a nod. Yes, and I'm already late. My mom's gonna be furious. I really have to go." He paused, then almost mockingly, he raised a hand and said, "All right, all right. Take care of yourself, yeah? Stay safe. And hold on to that innocence." He then turned and walked away like nothing had happened. Even now, years later, just remembering that moment makes my hand shake. He was unpredictable, calculated, like he had a whole script ready, just waiting for the chance to use it. It wasn't a ghost, it wasn't a monster. It was just a man. And that's what makes it worse. Because monsters don't follow you in taxis. Monsters don't smile at red lights. Monsters don't ask questions that you're too afraid to answer. But people do. Stay alert, trust your fear, and please, never roll your window down for a stranger. My friend has an older sister. We all think she's being stalked. It's ongoing, but I want to share what's happening currently. My friend's sister has been staying with my friend for a while now to get away from it all and repel her stalker. She said that it's like living in a nightmare. I wanted to do something nice for her, so I offered to take them both out for dinner to take their minds off of things. We sat down to dinner, and things were going well until I saw my friend's sister's face drop. She began to tremble. I felt bad for asking them to come out. Maybe it was too soon. And then she muttered, "He sat behind me." I looked behind her, and I saw an old man with an unnaturally creepy smile, and he was peering towards our table. He made me feel nauseous. He was just gross. He was the stalker. My friend had seen this guy following her sister before, so we were beyond it being a coincidence or a case of paranoia. My friend had had enough, and she stood up and went over to his table and then said loudly, "If you don't stop following my sister, I'm going to call the police." A few tables of people looked over, but the old man was just sat there smiling that inane smile. After a few moments, he got up, stepped away from his table, and then left. His expression didn't change. He just kept smiling. We thought that bit of public embarrassment might be enough to put the creep off and make him leave my friend's sister alone. We were convinced that it would work, and it turned out to be a correct prediction. Over the coming days, we would all joke about how easy it was. Everything came to a standstill for her sister, and a sense of normality was resumed in her life. However, just as soon as it ended, it seemed to start again. This time, the old man's target of torment was different. This time, he was stalking my friend and not her sister, and he was a little more cunning in his method of stalking this time around. The old man began to haunt her life. He would just appear in any place she went, but always at a distance or appearing inconspicuous. I will give you some examples. If she was out taking a walk or simply heading home, the old man would appear on his bike, riding towards her from behind her. He would smile that creepy smile as he passed her by. He would be there during a rush hour in the subway where crowds are gathered, and it made her feel as if she had no escape from him. In places where it was difficult to move or get away quickly, she would see that weirdo and smile. Enough was enough. My friend went to the police, but unfortunately, they weren't able to help. They said that because he hasn't actually done anything except smile at her and her sister, they couldn't do anything. She left the station frustrated and with a feeling of vulnerability. The old man and his behavior got worse. He was everywhere. She thought that the police might have been able to intervene when she saw him at college campus, but again, they weren't able to help or offer any kind of protection. To the untrained eye, he was just an old man who was walking around smiling. I mean, what's the harm in that? She tried to mobilize all her friends to help to discourage his behavior, but to our surprise, some of her friends didn't believe her. They said that she was grasping at straws. She must have felt quite alone at that time, but I believed her though. I had first-hand experience. I saw that creep with my own eyes. Plus, anyone who knew my friend well enough would say that she is far from a liar or an exaggerator. It was helpless. Every day she grew more nervous and worn down, and every day the old man just smiled at her. He never did anything. He just watched her and smiled. She eventually dropped out of college and has grown less and less responsive to my calls and also my messages. I haven't really heard from her lately, and it's really worrying me. I feel as if we are right on the edge of something happening. Maybe I should speak up and yell at him, like she did for her sister. But if I did that, wouldn't he just start stalking me? I don't know. Recently, I got in contact with her sister and I asked how she was doing. She thought that she was just wrapped up with studies. She didn't know what had been going on. I don't know what will come of this, but I am hoping that she is just laying low for a while. And I hope that the creep hasn't escalated his stalking. It was summer break, and we, my family, didn't go on any trip, unlike every break. I was just 8 years old, and my younger sister was 3. We were playing along with other kids who lived in the same building as us, just on different floors. The building is not exactly an apartment building. It's more of a multi-storied house. The front gate is a bit further from there and the only entrance and exit of the building. So, since we were downstairs and playing, anybody who would enter or exit the building would be visible to us, and we would greet them because every tenant knows us and we know them, as well as their family members who might visit them. A new person visiting any tenant is rare but not impossible. Right adjacent to the big entrance gate is a small old-style window with a grill, but it has a small opening at the bottom. We were all playing, but then I got tired and I sat on one of the chairs placed at the porch-like place. I'm not sure what to call it, to be honest. From where the window thingy falls on my right side, and I can see it as well as the gate clearly. I was just looking out when I noticed a man staring at the gate, which looked similar to this. So basically, he was able to look at my sister and friends through it. It concerned me when I realized that he wasn't even trying to look away and just staring at them blankly. I turned around from where I was sitting to signal my friend to move to the other side away from his sight, which she didn't understand. Frustrated, I turned back and I was about to stand up when my gaze fell on the guy, and he was now staring at me. My body froze, and I could feel fear creeping up on me. I couldn't move. I don't know why I stared back at him. And suddenly, he started smiling. And when I say smiling, I mean full-on grinning from ear to ear. That scared the soul out of me, and I mustered some courage. I then got up and I ran towards my friends. I didn't tell them anything, and I just asked them to go upstairs with me, which thankfully they did without questioning. I didn't tell anything about this to my parents because I thought that they would stop me from going downstairs to play. The next day, we again came to play and I looked through the window just to make sure that he wasn't there. Fortunately, he wasn't. Or so I thought. 15 minutes in, I spot the guy again. He was again standing at the very spot and staring at us, at me. I tried to play it cool because my friends knew nothing about him, but I couldn't for long, and then we went back again. From what I remember, this happened for 3 to 4 days, And now my friends started to complain about how I don't let them play and that they have to come back earlier than they are supposed to. On the fifth day, or fourth, I don't remember correctly, I made up my mind to not pay attention to him and just focus on playing. We were playing cricket that evening and I was batting. I hit the ball hard, causing it to go over the gate, which was a very normal thing. And as per rules made by us, the one responsible must fetch the ball. My heart started beating because I could see his grin getting wider and creepier. He went towards the ball on the road and then picked it up. He then held his hand out, gesturing for me to come and take it. I was shit scared at this point, but I had to go, so I did. And as soon as I reached to take the ball from his hand, he bent, coming close to my ear, and his words are still ringing clearly in my ears till this day. He said, "I'm a good man. Look at the window when you go inside. I'll leave something for you." That sent shivers down my spine, and I ran with the speed of light. After we were done playing, I saw him sliding a piece of paper from that little opening. He then looked at me, grinned, and then waved goodbye. I grabbed the paper and I opened it. He had written his phone number and asked me to call him sharp at 2 in the afternoon, that he knew my parents would be asleep by that time. It was also written that if I don't do it, my friends' lives would be in danger. As an 8-year-old, I didn't know any better, so I called him through my mother's phone. He picked up the call, and I didn't have the courage to say anything, so I was silent. He said, "You're a good girl. Just like me, you should come stay with me. Come outside. I'm waiting to pick you up." Because I live upstairs, I went to the balcony and he was actually standing near the gate, looking directly at me and waving and smiling. I couldn't contain it anymore, so I started crying and I disconnected the call. I ran inside and I bawled my eyes out in my room. Thankfully, my mother didn't wake up and I cried it all out. I didn't go out for the next few weeks and everybody kept asking me about it. I still didn't tell them though. That guy stopped coming too. I don't remember the time he stopped coming, but he did and I was relieved. Eventually, this experience started fading and I grew up. Fast forward to 10 years, I was 18 and my mother asked me to buy some snacks. I took my sister and then we went out. The shop that I had to go to was at the end of the road, several houses away, so not too far. I was standing in a queue when I felt uncomfortable because of the man standing behind me, because he kept pushing me. Annoyed, I looked at him, only to realize that it was the same man. My face went pale and I could feel my heart throbbing in my throat. I tried not to panic and I calmed myself down by telling myself that he couldn't do anything in public, that there were tons of people there, and that gave me a sense of security. And as soon as my order came, I took out my wallet hastily to pay, but he beat me to it. The owner looked at him weirdly and then at me, because I was a regular there and he was seeing this man for the first time. I paid for it anyway, and the owner politely asked him to take his money back. I gave the bag to my sister and I asked her to go home to inform our mom about a man following us. And just in case that he attacks, I'll have a backing and she would be safe too. Our house is within the vision range of the shop, so I waited for her to get inside. And now, it's my turn to go home. As soon as I stepped out, the man followed me and said something like, "You're a beautiful lady now. Let's catch up." I kept walking and walking, but now they were far from the shop and he started speed walking and I had to walk faster. I could feel goosebumps all over my body. I started running and I could see him catching up to my speed when the owner of the shop called for him loudly, saying that some of his money was still at the counter and asking him to come back, which gave me enough time to get inside and lock the gate. I haven't seen him since that day, and it's been 2 years. I'm 20 right now, and I hope to never meet him anywhere in the future. I hope I never see him again. I don't know why it has instilled a paranoia in me, and I dread seeing him when I turn 28. Update. I told my mom everything after that because my dad lives in another city for work. I didn't tell him since it would make him hella worried and possibly affect his work. My distant uncle is a local cop and is quite close and trustworthy. We tried finding the creepy guy after that but couldn't. He literally vanished in thin air. We also asked the shop owner about him, but he said the guy came back, took his money, and then went away. Nobody else paid any attention to this guy, so we couldn't find anything. I go to college by public transport, so I have to walk around 1 kilometer to reach the stop. I take the other road, which is opposite to the road that leads to the shop. It does take longer comparatively, but I feel better at least. Not once have I seen that guy or felt anything creepy since then, which is a relief. But again, I'm kind of paranoid every time that I step out, though I do carry pepper spray and a sharp keychain with me all the time. About moving out, well, we can't afford that just yet. Possibly after I complete my degree, which still has 3 years left. This happened around 7 or 8 years ago. I had just moved from the countryside to Chiba to start university. I was 19 at that time, young, excited, and a little naive. It was my first time living alone. The apartment was a rundown one-room place, one of those 1K units, just a single room, a small kitchen and a bathroom. A second floor, no elevator, and it was cramped, dusty. The walls were thin enough to hear your neighbors fart, but honestly, I kinda liked it. It felt like mine. And after a few months, I settled in. I got used to campus life, even got my first boyfriend, and things were good. But that's when I noticed the neighbor. She was this really pretty woman, probably in her late 20s, early 30s. She looked like the kind of office worker you'd see in a commercial, always polite and always quiet. But there was one thing about her apartment that stood out. Right next to her front door, there was a narrow frosted glass window, about 70 centimeters wide and 40 centimeters tall, with these vertical bars across it. It was the kind of window that you would barely notice unless you look closely. And she had it completely covered up with flyers, layer after layer, taped across the glass like she didn't want anyone looking in. I pointed out to my boyfriend one day and then joked, "What's up with that? Think she's hiding a secret or something?" We laughed, and then we agreed that the next time we saw her, we would ask about it. And we did. But her answer changed everything. She said, "Oh, yeah, I feel a little awkward about this. I'm sorry, but I guess it would be wrong to keep this to myself. There's some guy that's been trying to peek in through that window. He comes in the middle of the night, and then he puts his face right up against the glass." She says that he doesn't knock, doesn't say a word, and just stares inside. We were horrified. I told her, "Look, my boyfriend's around a lot, so if anything happens, just bang on the wall or call out. We'll come over right away." She smiled and then thanked us. And about a month later, she was gone. No goodbye, no notice, just vanished. Moved out like she was running. And then something horrible began. It started happening to me. One night I was alone, laying on my bed, scrolling on my phone just trying to fall asleep. That's when I heard something. A sharp, metallic tap on the door. It wasn't a knock, it wasn't the doorbell. It sounded like something hard, metal, lightly hitting the door. And I just froze. Now, keep in mind, this was a tiny apartment. If I left the kitchen door open, I could lie on the bed and see the front door without even getting up. So I turned my head just slightly and watched as the door handle slowly started to turn. It was one of those horizontal handles that you have to push down to open, and it was moving, soundlessly, downward. My mind went blank. I just stared at it, trying to remember. Did I lock it? Please, please tell me I locked it. I had. I was sure I had. Still, I needed to do something. So I reached over, grabbed a shoe, and I slammed it against the glass sliding door next to the kitchen. Then bang! The door handle immediately stopped moving. And then it slowly lifted back into place and everything went still. I didn't breathe, didn't move. I didn't even want to blink. I called the police the next day and they said that they would increase patrols and make a note of it, and that was it. The second time it happened was a month later. Again, I was alone, but this time there was no slow buildup. There was just the sound of someone trying to open the door hard, like they thought that it was unlocked and they were trying to force it. I jumped out of bed and I ran to the peephole, and there was someone standing there, wearing a bucket hat pulled low over their face, motionless, just standing there facing my door. I felt my whole body break out in goosebumps, and I backed away slowly, got on the floor, and tried to keep my breathing quiet. And with trembling hands, I called the police. You'd think they would rush over, right? Nope, they said. Can you check again? Is the person still there? Can you try to describe them? I wanted to scream. You want me to stick my face near the door again? Are you out of your mind? But I did it anyway, and he was still there. The same position, just standing and waiting. I gave a panicked description and I asked them to hurry. There was a police box just 5 minutes away, but they said that my area fell under a different jurisdiction. It took 40 minutes for someone to arrive. In the meantime, I called my boyfriend, who sprinted from his job and got there before the police did. And when they finally arrived, we told them everything. And my boyfriend, half laughing, half furious, said, "So, if she was half dead when you showed up, would that have gotten your attention?" And all they said was, "We'll patrol the area more frequently." And that was it. The third time was different. My boyfriend was actually with me. We were standing in the kitchen, casually washing dishes and talking, when suddenly, a gust of cold air blew into the room. We both shivered, and it took a second for us to register it. Wait, we didn't open a window, did we? We turned to look, and that's when I saw it. A pair of eyes right there, staring at us through the window. Our kitchen window, second floor, narrow ledge, no balcony. We just locked eyes, 10 seconds maybe, but it felt like a year. I couldn't speak. My mouth moved, but nothing came out. I tapped my boyfriend's shoulder, pointed, tried to say something, but the fear locked up my voice. And he saw it. He bolted out the door, sprinting down the stairs, and I followed a few seconds behind. By the time that I reached the hallway, I saw him too. The guy. He was already on a mountain bike, pedaling away. He had been prepared. We looked at the window from the outside, and one of the metal bars had been broken. The one thing that was supposed to keep people from looking in, he had snapped it. And the worst part? Our bathroom was right next to that window. It was an old apartment, so there was no changing room. And every time that I stepped out of the shower, I was completely exposed. He'd probably been watching for weeks at this point. We moved out immediately after that. Years passed. I eventually broke up with that boyfriend. I graduated, got a job, and life moved on. But one day, not long ago, we bumped into each other by chance. We had a coffee, caught up, and of course, the stalker came up. We laughed about it, said stuff like, well, he probably only started watching you after the pretty neighbor moved out. Like it was all just some messed up chain reaction. But then, my ex suddenly got quiet. He looked serious and then he said, Um, there's something I never told you before. The night that I chased that guy on the bike, I didn't want to scare you, but he was holding a knife. Like a long one, like a sashimi knife. I just stared at him. I thought about what could have happened if the door hadn't been locked, if I hadn't hit the glass, if my boyfriend had caught up to him. I thought about all of it. That whole area was full of cheap apartments for students, thin doors, no security, and easy targets. Was he a stalker? A pervert? A robber? Or something worse? I still don't know. But sometimes I lay awake at night thinking about that first sound, the metallic tapping, and I wonder, was he tapping the door with his knife? And that building, it's still standing. Let's just hope that the police did increase their patrols. When I was 20 and female, I worked at a Costco bakery as a cake decorator. Most days, it was just me and one other person, a 35 male coworker for hours on end. He was a character. The best way that I can describe him is that he seemed like and had mentioned something along the lines that he had done a lot of drugs at some point and now saw the world in this weird cosmic way. I'm a pretty go-with-the-flow person, so I just humored his conversations. Pretty quickly, I got the vibe that he liked me. I'm not trying to sound full of myself, I think it was just really obvious. I think I mentioned that I had a boyfriend once, and he later told me that he likes girls with husbands or boyfriends, because that's his track record. He also said people have given him crap for liking younger girls, which is a big red flag. He started bringing me little gifts and making me lunch based on things that I'd casually said before. He would get way too excited when I came in, and at some point, he even figured out what car I drove, which freaked me out a bit. And after I quit, he started messaging me, mostly replying to my stories that I'll admit I responded a few times, just trying to be nice. But I regret it now. One day, he randomly sent me a bunch of pictures with my name on them, stuff that he had apparently come across over the past month. My name is pretty common, so I figured he was just collecting them whenever he saw it. He said that he thought he almost saw me somewhere in public and then panicked before realizing that it wasn't me. That honestly gave me the creeps. I've been uneasy about this from the very beginning. I'm sure he likes me, but I was honestly just being friendly. I don't know if this is something that you can even file a police report over, or if that would be too extreme. He also lent me a movie, and I really don't want to see him to give it back. We live in a pretty small town, so I'm scared that I'll run into him somewhere. What should I do? The first time this happened was when I was in middle school. When I was in 7th grade, I would ride the bus to either my house or my grandma's on Wednesdays, along with my cousins and siblings. Both houses are at the bottom of 2 hills and have long driveways. And every Wednesday, we would see a van parked at the top of the hill as we were getting off at Grandma's house. Once the bus left, the van would drive slowly past the driveway or pull in and watch us. One day, as we were getting off at my house, the van sped to the driveway and then pulled in as we ran as fast as we could to the door. As soon as we got inside, they sped away as they saw another vehicle at the house. My grandma started picking us up at the end of the driveway and they stopped. The second and third time this happened was when I was going to college. One night, I wanted some ice cream and I went to the grocery store. It was just about dark, but the parking lot was quite full as it was a small grocery store. My only option was to park next to a white truck. I'm slightly paranoid and I try to get out of the car and into the store as quickly as possible. As I was getting out of the car, I noticed the passenger door of the truck open and an arm tried to grab me. I booked it inside and I stay there until the truck leaves and an employee can walk me out. The next year, I began a job at Burlington. We had a regular customer that always came to my register. He seemed a little strange and never really talked to me. A few nights after I get off, I notice a vehicle parked near my car every night that doesn't belong to my coworkers. I brushed it off, but I stay aware. Often, when I got off, I would get wings from the next door. One night, as I'm waiting in my car for my order, I see this customer get out of this truck and then start walking toward me as he is fiddling with something in his hands. I forgot about my order and I just sped off, and I also quit the job shortly after. Now, I have been seeing the same man at every store I go to lately. I go out to eat, he's there. I go to the store, he's there. I go to the park with my daughter, and he's driving by. I never see him near my house or my work, so I'm unsure if it's just a coincidence. However, I'm starting to get scared to leave the house as I am scared that he is actually following me. Hi everyone, my name is Chris, I'm female, and I'm 29, and I own a little flower shop nestled in the heart of town. It's a small business, but one that I have poured my heart into. Flowers have always fascinated me. Their colors, their scents, the way they can speak volumes without even uttering a word. Every day, I wake up early, excited to spend my hours surrounded by their beauty, arranging them into bouquets that brightens people's lives. Running a florist shop is not just about selling flowers. It's about being part of people's stories. I make arrangements for weddings, birthdays, and even those somber occasions like funerals. Each order carries its own significance, and I feel honored to be a part of those moments in some small way. I have a few regular customers who pop in throughout the week, but most days, I enjoy a steady flow of new faces, people who wander in off the street, drawn by the fresh blooms that line in the shop windows. It's really a peaceful job, one where I get to express creativity and share a bit of joy with the world. But today, I'm not writing solely to share about my job. I'm writing about an experience that I had that I considered somewhat scary, creepy, disturbing. I'm not quite sure what word is best to describe it, so I'm just gonna leave my story here and let you decide. A few months ago, a new customer started visiting the shop. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about him. He appeared polite and reserved. He was asking simple questions about the different types of flowers and also their meanings. I was more than happy to help. I was enjoying the chance to share my knowledge and passion. He came in regularly, more frequently than most, and in each visit, he bought a small gift. It could be a single cookie, a little smiley note, always different from the last. I thought nothing of it initially, since those were very simple gifts. I thought that he just appreciated the work that I do. Lots of people enjoy having fresh flowers at home, so maybe it was to thank me for that. But over time, I started noticing a pattern. He was always there, lingering in the shop, watching me closely as I worked. He began asking questions that felt too personal, wanting to know more about my life beyond the shop. I tried to keep the conversation light and professional, always steering it back to the flowers and their care. But his interest in me felt different, and it was starting to make me uneasy. One day, as I was closing up, I noticed him standing across the street. He didn't approach or wave, he just stood there watching as I locked the doors. It left a knot in my stomach, a feeling that I couldn't quite shake off. What the hell is he doing? I tried to wave at him, but he didn't wave back or say anything, so I just walked on and headed home. I convinced myself that it was harmless. Maybe he was just having a rough day. But then, he started showing up outside of the shop. And I would see him in grocery stores, the park where I took my morning walks, even at the cafe that I frequented on weekends. It was hard to dismiss as a coincidence when it happened so often, almost like he knew my schedule. The unease grew into something more when I received a letter in the mail. It wasn't like the usual orders or thank you notes that I sometimes get from the customers. This one was different. It was addressed directly to me with no return address. Inside, it was a single photo of me, one that looked like I didn't know that there was even a camera, and it was on a day where I wasn't in the shop. It also had confessions of love and admirations, and there was no sign of who sent it at the bottom. Reading it sent chills down my spine. It was clear that someone was watching me closely, and I couldn't help but connect the dots back to him. The thought of having an unwanted observer tracking my life was frightening. It made the world feel smaller, less safe. I became more cautious, and I was altering my routine slightly, trying to avoid being too predictable, and I started leaving the shop at different times, taking alternate routes going home, hoping to shake off the feeling of being followed. But everywhere I went, I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see him there. Despite the growing tension, I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy in the shop. My work was my refuge, a place where I could focus on beauty of the flowers and forget, if only for a moment, the creepy person or shadow or whatever that seemed to lurk in my life. But his presence was persistent. One evening after closing, I found a single flower left on the doorstep, a lily, my favorite. At first, I thought that it was just a kind gesture, but in context, and after everything that happened, it felt like something darker, a message meant only for me. Well, one night, everything was confirmed when he came into my shop again. I felt the chill, but I acted normal and professional, asking him with what I can help him with. And the words that came out of his mouth next was something that I kind of expected, but still gave me a shock and definitely frightened me. I can't remember it word for word, of course, but it was something along the lines of, "Why? Why are you not interested in me? Have I not been giving you enough attention? Am I not enough for you?" The way he said it wasn't sad. It was full of anger and desperation. I told him that I am not interested in being in any kind of relationship at all, since I am busy working on my business and my dreams, and that I am sorry for not being able to return his feelings, but I'm just not interested. His expression became dark after I said those, and he looked like he was coming closer to me. So I told him that I will be willing to call the police if he doesn't leave me in my shop alone. That must have snapped him out of whatever he was thinking. And then he turned around, but before he left, he said, "This isn't over." I'm not gonna lie. I tried my best to act brave, but damn, was I scared out of my mind. I knew that I needed to take action, especially with the threat he left. I reached out to a friend who understood my situation. I explained everything that had happened. It was actually a relief to talk about it, to have someone validate my fears. Together, we decided that it was the best time to involve the authorities. I reached out to the authorities and I filed a report. They said that they couldn't do much without proof. But then I remembered that these things happened in my shop that had my security cameras. I gave them access to it, and they were able to trace back not only the latest interaction, but even the past multiple occurrences when he came to my shop. I was able to file a restraining order against him, and everything went back to normal. I apologize if there wasn't something in my story that seems very scary or dramatic, but to me, it was one of the scariest things that I have ever been through. So, to the man who stalked me in my own flower shop, let's not meet again. This happened a while ago at Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi. I was there with a friend, just having a normal theme park day, riding coasters, walking around, grabbing food, the usual. But then things got really uncomfortable. It all started on the turbo track ride. Me and my friend got seated next to this Indian guy, probably mid-20s, full mustache, looked more mature than your average tourist. And after the ride ended, he started talking to us and asked if we wanted to hang out. We kind of laughed it off and then walked away without really answering him. That was our mistake. As we walked through the park, we kept noticing him nearby. It wasn't a coincidence. He was clearly following us. And every time that we stopped, he stopped. Every time we changed direction, he somehow ended up behind us again. Then came the questions. Where are your parents? Do you live around here? Are you from this country? Do you have any way to communicate with your parents? His tone wasn't friendly. It was off, like creepy, like he was testing how alone we were. And not trying to be offensive, but if you lived in the UAE, you know how some people from certain regions can sometimes get way too familiar or overly confident around others, especially younger people. That's exactly what this felt like. Way too comfortable, way too fast. Eventually, we made our way to Flying Aces, and I came up with a quick plan. I told my friend, loud enough for the guy to hear, that I felt sick and I wanted to skip the ride. We dipped into a nearby small shop instead, hoping to throw him off. We thought we lost him, but later, we sat down to eat at one of the restaurants in the park. We were finishing up finally starting to relax. But then, we saw him again. Only this time, he wasn't alone. He had two other men with him, and they were clearly looking around the restaurant like actively scanning for someone. And then he pointed right at us, and all three of them started walking in our direction. We calmly stood up and walked off like we were heading to the restroom or something. As soon as we were out of view, we made a run for the nearest exit through the gift shop. They were definitely following us at first. We could feel it. But once we made it into the connected Yas Mall and then slipped into the crowd, we finally lost them. I still don't know what they wanted. It could have just been harassment, but it could have been something much sinister. All I know is I'm really glad that we trusted our gut and got out of there before whatever messed up thing we could have gotten into with that guy and his friends. The lesson is, if you're a young person in an amusement park, always stick with who you are with, whether it's just one friend or a sibling, and don't allow people to join you out of the blue, and don't make the mistake by giving the impression of you being okay with it. Don't be scared to say no, and make sure your parents know about it if someone starts following you or joins you, since anything can happen these days. My name is Fred, and I played in a small local band. We were nothing big, just a group of friends who jammed together and occasionally played gigs at bars and even local events around the town in the 1980s. Music has always been my escape, a way to express what words cannot, and I play the guitar, and my bandmates say that I've got a knack for it. The band came into existence somewhat organically. It started with Mike, our drummer, who I met through a mutual friend. We clicked instantly over our shared love for old rock bands. And then there's Jenny, our bassist, who joined after we heard her play at an event one night. Her skills were undeniable, and she brought a new groove to our sound. And lastly, we had Jesus on the vocals. He's got this raw, powerful voice that commands attention and has always been the face of our band. We don't play for fame or money, but for us, it's about the joy of making music together, feeling that rush when a song comes together perfectly. We usually practice in Mike's garage, surrounded by old posters and instruments that we've picked up over the years. It's comfortable, it's a creative space where our ideas flow as easily as the music. Our biggest audience is usually made up of familiar faces, our friends, our family, and some locals who enjoy our sound. We don't expect much more than that, really. So, when we started seeing a new face at every gig, it caught my attention. She was always there, front row, watching intently. At first, I thought she was just another music lover, but there was something about her. I'm not saying that in an I'm in love kind of way. It was a I'm feeling uncomfortable kind of way. She stood out, not just because she was always there, but because she had this intensity in her eyes. It was as if she was trying to memorize every chord, every lyric. I'd see her mouthing the words to our songs, and it was flattering at first. I mean, who wouldn't want a dedicated fan, right? But soon, it began to feel more personal. Our band started gaining a bit more attention locally, thanks to some decent write-ups in the town blogs. And that's when she started appearing off stage too. After our gigs, while packing up our gear, I would spot her hanging back, waiting near the exit or outside the venue. Once or twice, she tried to approach, but with the noise and bustle, it was easy to slip away unnoticed. Despite the growing crowd, her presence became something that I just couldn't ignore. She started showing up at places where I wouldn't expect. I'd see her at my favorite coffee shop, sitting a few tables away, or at a park where I sometimes went to clear my mind. She never approached me. She just watched from afar with that same intense gaze. I brushed it off at first, convinced that I was imagining things or being paranoid. After all, it was a small town and paths were bound to cross. But when she started to appear outside our band practice sessions, any semblance of coincidence vanished. We would wrap up a late night session only to find her standing across the street, partially hidden in the shadows, watching us pack up. It was unsettling, this constant feeling of being observed, so I talked to the band about it, but they laughed it off. To them, it was just a harmless fan, maybe a bit over-enthusiastic, but definitely not a threat. Jesus even joked that it was good for our image to have real fans. But something about it just didn't sit right with me. I tried to ignore it, hoping that she would lose interest and move on. But instead, things escalated. I started receiving anonymous notes left under the windshield wipers of my car or slipped into my guitar case when I wasn't looking. They were meticulously handwritten, filled with detailed descriptions of our performances and personal comments that felt too intimate, too informed. The notes made it clear that she knew more about me than a casual fan should. Little things about my life that were never shared publicly. It was as if she had peeled back layers to see things meant only for me. I became hyper aware of my surroundings, looking over my shoulder more often than before. The joy that I found in playing in front of a lot of people started slipping away, replaced by anxiety and discomfort. One night, after a particularly draining gig, I found myself alone picking up my guitar in the empty venue. The others had left already. I was a bit late since I had to battle with nature in the toilet. I'm sorry for that. Well, as I turned to leave, there she was, standing directly in the doorway. Her presence in the dim light felt almost surreal. My heart pounded as I forced myself to stay calm. I was pretending to check my phone as I moved towards the exit. She didn't say a word. She just watched with those intense eyes that haunted me for weeks. I slipped past her, out into the cool night air, hoping that the darkness would swallow me up before she could follow. This encounter really creeped me out, so I reached out to a friend of mine who was working in law enforcement, and I explained the whole thing. He took it seriously, which was great. He then offered some advice on how to document everything and stay safe, saying that they really couldn't do anything if I didn't have definitive proof. From that point, I took precautions. I was always making sure that I wasn't alone when leaving gigs or practices. I informed the band again, who finally understood the seriousness of the situation. They offered their support, making sure that someone was always with me, especially when going home late at night. But funny enough, after everyone and even myself was taking this more seriously, the sightings became less frequent, as if she sensed the shift that I was documenting stuff and observing her more seriously. Playing with my band is still one of my greatest joys in life, but it's different. I'm more cautious, more aware of how exposed we are on stage, even in our small town bubble. It's a strange balance, finding comfort in the spotlight while knowing what lurks just beyond. But it taught me the value of boundaries. Anyway, I just wanted to share this creepy old story of mine. I was compelled to right after joining Reddit and then discovering this sub. So yeah, stay safe everyone, and rock on. One sunny afternoon, my sister and I decided to go shopping at the local market. It was a busy day with people bustling about, some kids running around, and the usual chatter filling the air. We were standing in one of the aisles checking out the fresh fruits and vegetables when I noticed a man walking past us. He looked at me in a way that felt a bit odd. His gaze lingered a moment too long, but I just brushed it off thinking that it was just my imagination. We continued shopping, heading over to the bakery section to pick out some bread and some pastries. Yet, there he was again, standing a few feet away, watching me. I really tried to ignore him, convincing myself that it was nothing, just a coincidence. But as we moved to the dairy area, he was still there, keeping his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that started to make me uneasy. He had a stern look on his face, like he was upset or something. I whispered to my sister about what was happening, and she suggested that we walk around the store to see if he would keep following us. We meandered through different sections, just pretending to browse, but sure enough, he trailed behind us, maintaining that unsettling stare at me. My heart began to race a bit, anxiety bubbling in my chest. It felt surreal, like a scene out of one of those crime shows on TV, but it was happening in real life, right there in the middle of our small town market. When we finally finished shopping, I felt a mix of relief and lingering fear. We decided to inform one of the store employees about the man, and the staff member was helpful and kind, offering to walk us out to our car just to ensure that we felt safe. They apologized for the situation and promised to review the security footage to report the suspicious behavior to the local authorities. Well, I don't really know what happened to that, but I was never contacted by police. The encounter left me with a strange feeling, a reminder of how quickly an ordinary day can take a turn. It was unsettling to realize that such things could happen even in familiar places. But I think no one ever thinks that these things happen to them. It's supposed to be just the other people, right? I later tried to share this experience online, hoping to alert others to be cautious and more aware. But let's just say that I ran into some challenges. The post was flagged and taken down by the moderators, who accused me of spreading false information, which was kind of frustrating. All I wanted was to make sure others would be more vigilant about their surroundings, especially in places where they normally feel safe. So instead, I'm sharing it here. Please stay safe, everyone. Hi. I wanted to share this creepy experience that I had in university. For context, I'm a female. For a while, everything seemed fine at school. My classes were going well, and I was enjoying time with friends. But then, out of nowhere, strange things started happening. It began with small unsettling incidents. My things moved around and were at places that I'm sure I didn't leave them on. I thought that it was just my exhaustion or stress because of the exams coming up soon. But then some things went missing entirely. Not just random stuff at home that I could brush off, but things that were very personal to me, like my journal and some underwear. I know, it's a bit embarrassing. I also had this persistent feeling of being watched that I couldn't quite explain. It was unnerving, something like a shadow in the corner of my eye that vanished when I tried to focus on it. I really didn't know who to turn to. I didn't want to worry my parents, so I decided to confide in my longtime friend, Josh. We had known each other for years, and he had always been someone that I could rely on. A best friend, you can call him that. When I told him about the stalking and the weird experiences I was having, he was very sympathetic, and he suggested practical things to help me feel safer. He advised me to change the code on my locker and become more cautious about my routine, and for a while it felt reassuring to have his support. But despite these measures, the stalking and strange occurrences continued. Whoever it was seemed to know things no one else should, like the new combination to my locker. I couldn't figure out how they were doing it. Only Josh knew about the new combo. He was there when I changed it, and I trusted him completely. But as the incidents persisted, doubt began to creep in my mind. I had a theory, and I wanted to test it. I changed my lock combination without telling Josh, and after that, nothing in my locker was ever disturbed again. I stopped leaving a spare key under my mat and then changed the locks on my bedroom door, and nothing in my house, specifically my room, was disturbed again. Just to note, as I mentioned, Josh has been a friend for years, and he knew about the key under the mat since he visits my house from time to time, and there has been multiple instances when I was too lazy to open the door and I just told him to use the key under the mat. I felt a mix of relief and dread as the evidence pointed in a troubling direction. I began making other changes too, small things like varying my schedule and keeping details to myself. And each time, the stalkers seemed to be out of the loop, confirming what I was beginning to fear. My heart sank as I realized that Josh, my trusted friend, could be behind all of this. It was a difficult realization, but I knew that I had to distance myself. I started avoiding him, ignoring his texts and his calls, and I didn't respond when he asked to meet up. I blocked his number after he repeatedly tried reaching out. One day, as I was heading home, I noticed him waiting outside my house. Panic gripped me, and I quickly went inside, locking the door behind me. My dad was home early, and he noticed Josh loitering outside. He then went out to confront him, firmly telling him to leave. Josh eventually walked away after some stern words from my dad. And later that night, I sat down with my dad and mom and shared everything that I had pieced together about the stalking. My dad was furious and he wanted to confront Josh himself, but my mom and I managed to calm him down, and instead, he decided to call Josh's parents, explaining the situation and demanding that they tell Josh to stay away from me. After that call, the stalking incidents became less frequent. It was as if the message had finally gotten through. Over the next few months, everything stopped completely. I never spoke to Josh again, and part of me is sad about the loss of our friendship, but I also felt a profound sense of relief knowing that that chapter of my life is over. This goes back to around 2022. I, a 14-year-old female, was a Valorant addict, and I would play for hours. I wouldn't normally use my mic because I had social anxiety, and also Valorant gamers are really weird with females. I had met this guy who was pretty chill though. He invited me to queue up with his friends, one girl and one guy, and I accepted. His friend was super sweet and funny, and we got along pretty well, so I decided to add him as a friend. We started playing some matches from time to time, and we exchanged Discords. We started talking more and more, and I did eventually get attached. I could tell that he was really into me, He would praise and text me a lot, and a few months passed. We then exchanged Instagrams and we started messaging each other. Throughout all of this, we hadn't established if we were friends or more. We would flirt occasionally, but it wouldn't go further than that. One day, he asked for my Snapchat. I agreed, even though I was sort of suspicious. Men on Snapchat? I know where that leads, but I didn't really mind it, since I did kind of like him. Things did turn sexual after a few days, and he would send me pictures and videos. I didn't send anything back, but I would entertain it, and that was mistake number one. Maybe 6 months, a year after we initially met, so end of 2023, I, 15 already, told him that I didn't want anything serious, no relationship, but we could be friends with benefits. He enthusiastically agreed, and I ended up sending him pictures. And that's mistake number 2. I really thought that I was safe because it was on Snapchat, and you can see if they screenshot. A few weeks passed and I realized that I never did see his face, and I knew almost nothing about him. I started asking more about him, found out his name is Joshua and lives in Florida. He has multiple mental illnesses and he has trouble with the police before. He showed me his face and I realized how deep in shit I was, and I started texting him less and less, which infuriated him. And at some point, I decided to officially cut him off. I tried to do it as politely as I could, and I blocked him, and I thought that was it. Beginning of 2024, I received a text from my sister. "Hey, who's Josh?" And I felt my knees weaken and my stomach drop. I asked her why, and she told me that she would tell me when she gets home. When she finally arrived, I was already waiting for her in the kitchen, and she gave me this look. I started crying and then she hugged me. He sent her my pictures and threatened to leak them. I had no choice but to talk about it with my mom, and she told me that we should go to the police. I agreed, and then we went to the police station, where they told me that they would send officers at my house and that they would take my phone and talk to me and my sister. It kind of dawned on me that this was really serious, and I got scared, so I backed out, which is mistake number 3. Maybe a month or 2 later, Josh's brother texted me asking me to unblock him. We texted a bit and he told me that Josh would often sell nudes to pedophiles on Telegram. I realized how deep in shit I was, but I was still too scared to speak up, and I really should have. Josh texted my friend's boyfriend, and no idea how he found him, and started telling him how I was horrible and asking him if he wanted my nudes. A few months later, he texted my then boyfriend telling him the same thing, but threatening to send him my nudes if I wouldn't talk to him. So I unblocked him. Mistake number 4. I didn't lead him on. I told him to back off and leave me alone, that I would go to the cops, and then he told me, and I quote, "That would just show me how much you love me." And I obviously reblocked him. I since then every few months get a Snapchat or Instagram request from him. I would sometimes accept it, and I would tell him to back off again, telling him that I don't love him. I tried to find out his last name, and I remembered his brother that texted me. I texted him and asked him what was Josh's last name. He denied knowing me and knowing Josh. I sent him a screenshot of him a few months earlier talking to me about him, and he just ignored me. I'm wondering if there's anything I could do. I feel like I can't escape him wherever I go. I turned most of my accounts private because of him, and I have trouble trusting people now. I feel like I'm always just waiting for him to reappear. A few years ago, I was a university student renting a house with 3 friends on a quiet street in what's considered one of the safer, more privileged cities in the UK. I'd never heard of anything strange happening in the area. To help pay for tuition and rent, which was expensive, I worked late evening shifts at an ASDA, which closed at midnight. My shift usually ended at around 12:30 or 1 a.m., so I would often cycle home at weird hours, but nothing ever happened. My housemates, who I met through uni, were a year ahead of me and graduated and already busy with work. By the time that I get home, they are usually asleep, so the house was quiet when I got back. One winter night after a long shift, I was cycling home in the freezing cold. I was exhausted and I was moving slowly, which probably made me pretty quiet on the road. As I turned into the street where our house was, we lived at the far end, I noticed someone standing directly in front of our door. It wasn't one of my housemates. This guy was bald, and none of the people that I lived with were. He was just standing there, just still, facing the door, not knocking, not moving, not talking, just staring straight ahead. Our door did not have anything, no glass, no peephole, nothing. I slowed and I instinctively turned around before he could notice me. Something about it felt off. I circled a few nearby streets trying to think of what to do. I was too scared to go back, so I started calling my housemates but no answer. I texted a few friends too, hoping that someone might still be awake, but nothing. I could see my breath in the cold and my fingers were freezing around the handle of the bike. I kept cycling in better lit areas where there were still the occasional cars driving by, and being near movement felt safer. Eventually, I calmed down a bit, but I was drained. I had worked 12 hours, but it was nearly 3 a.m., and my phone battery was low, and I just wanted to go home. So I cycled back and I turned into the street again, and he was still there, same position, just staring at the door. I turned around and I went back to the main road. By now, it was even quieter. This was when I had a full-blown panic attack. I didn't know what to do anymore, and for some reason, don't ask me why, I never called the police. I really don't know why. I think I just froze. Eventually, one of my friends that I had messaged earlier replied, and they were still up. I asked if I could come to theirs, and thankfully, they said yes. It took a while to get there, but I finally made it by 4 a.m. I was beyond tired, but I was safe. I guess he eventually left, as the morning after, none of my housemates noticed anything. So to the bald guy staring at my door in the middle of the night, let's not meet again. I like doing my grocery shopping early at Kroger to avoid long lines and crowds. This past Saturday morning, as I was leaving the produce section, I noticed a frail middle-aged woman with no cart, arms crossed, walking past me. She didn't appear homeless, so I assumed she might just be grabbing a few small items. But as I moved to the meat section, I noticed her walking behind me, and something felt off. To test it, I turned down another aisle and she followed. I stopped at the beginning to let her pass, and she awkwardly paused, and then walked by me and pretended to look for something before leaving the aisle empty-handed. And that confirmed my suspicion that she was following me. And later, I spotted her again on the other side of the store, still with nothing in her hands. She followed me briefly again, and then completely disappeared. I got on the phone with my partner to let someone know what was happening just in case. I even said out loud, "You know when you feel like you're being followed?" And a man nearby turned around to look at me. Later at self-checkout, I saw that same man again. He looked right at me, asking the employee something, then left the store without buying anything. Now I wonder if he and the woman might have been connected, maybe watching or scouting me. It was a very strange experience, so it's just a reminder to stay alert and trust your instincts. For 4 years, Beverly and I had what I believed was an ideal relationship. I remember our first meeting vividly, as if it just happened yesterday. We met through mutual friends at a small party. She was 26 and full of life, with a laugh that could light up the room. I was 28, feeling like I had finally found someone who understood me. We clicked instantly, and our relationship blossomed quickly from innocent dates to talking about our future together. Beverly and I were good for each other. We encouraged each other to pursue our dreams, to stay healthy, to be the best versions of ourselves. She would cook my favorite meals when I had a tough day at work, and I would surprise her with little gifts and spontaneous trips. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we always found our way back to each other. Or so I thought. One Saturday morning, I was in the living room while Beverly was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, and without thinking much of it, I glanced over. A message notification popped up from someone named Gym Instructor. It wasn't the name that caught my attention, but the content of the message. It was flirty, suggestive, something that a gym instructor shouldn't be sending if it were simply professional. My heart sank. It never even crossed my mind that something like this could be happening behind my back. I was heartbroken. I confronted Beverly that same day when she got out of the shower. At first, she denied everything, claiming that it was just a misunderstanding. But as the argument escalated, she finally confessed. She had been cheating on me for months. This betrayal really cut deep. Our breakup was nasty. It was filled with angry words and broken promises, and I moved out that very week and cut all contact with her. It was actually easier than I thought, severing ties with someone who had caused me so much pain. That was definitely a painful experience, but that's not why I'm posting the story on here. It's something more unhinged that happened afterwards, but I thought that I would give you a background first so you would understand the story better. A year passed, and I started to rebuild my life. I met a girl named Jenny, and she was a breath of fresh air. We hit it off from the start and soon began going on dates. I didn't want to jump right into a relationship because I feel like I still had some doubts and trauma, especially from what happened with Beverly. But Jenny was everything that I needed. She was kind, loving, and honest. Our relationship felt so natural that after a few months of going out on dates, I finally asked her, and she said yes. We decided to make it official. So, I posted a picture of us together on social media, announcing to the world that I had moved on and found happiness again. Perfect ending, right? Nope. The very next day, Beverly sent me a message on Instagram. She berated me for moving on so quickly, as if she had any right to control my life. I was furious, and I reminded her of the reasons for our breakup. It had been a year since we ended things because she had cheated on me. I told her that she had no right to interfere in my life anymore, and then I blocked her. I thought that that would be the end of it, but Beverly was relentless. She tried to contact me in different social medias, and I blocked her on there too. She then started creating multiple fake social media accounts just to get in contact with me, and every single time I blocked her, thinking that she would eventually get the message and just leave me alone. She also sent me an email, which something that I forgot about, and I blocked her on there too. One evening, Jenny received a message from Beverly. She was confused and worried when she told me about it. I do understand that it was easy for Beverly to find Jenny online because she was all over on my page. I explained my past with Beverly and what has been going on recently. I didn't want to keep Jenny in the dark. We agreed to block Beverly from all social media platforms and hoped that that would be the end of her attempts to reach out to us. We just wanted to focus on our relationship without any distractions from my past. But as you already know, Beverly didn't stop there. The next day, she showed up at my workplace demanding to speak with me. I refused to see her, and she was eventually escorted out. It was so unsettling to think that she knew where I worked and was willing to come there uninvited. From that point on, I started seeing her everywhere. She would appear across the street when I was out with Jenny, or I would catch a glimpse of her at the grocery store. It felt like she was haunting me, just unwilling to let go. One day, I found a letter in my mailbox. Of course, it was from Beverly, filled with pleas for a second chance and all her declarations of love for me. I didn't respond and I just threw it away. But things escalated when one night there was a loud banging on my door. I looked through the peephole and I saw Beverly standing there. She looked disheveled and desperate, asking to be let in. I spoke to her through the door, telling her that nothing would change if we talked, and that I did not love her anymore and that we had been done for a year. I told her that she needed to move on and that I would call the police if she didn't leave. Beverly pleaded for a second chance, but I was firm. I told her that if she ever bothered me or Jenny again, we would involve the police. Luckily, that finally made her leave. I watched through the window as she walked away, hoping that it would be the last time that I would see her. A week has passed since that night, and Beverly hasn't shown herself or tried contacting me. I hope it really stays that way. I want to move on with my life, to build something meaningful with Jenny without the shadow of Beverly hanging over us. It's strange how someone who once made you feel so loved can become the source of your nightmares. Let this be a reminder to everyone. If someone shows you who they truly are, believe them the first time. It could save you from a lot of pain and turmoil. Beverly may have been a significant part of my past, but she has no place in my future. I hope for her sake and mine that she learns to let go and finds peace. Sometimes, moving on isn't just about finding a new love. It's about reclaiming your life from the ghosts of the past. And I've learned that the hard way. And I sincerely hope that we never meet again, Beverly. Hi. This story is pretty long and is also probably not as interesting as the other stuff that's posted on here. But when I was a little girl, I'm 18 now, I had this friend called Harry. We met through school, but our dads worked together. My dad got his apprenticeship through his dad and made our families close friends. Harry occasionally had days where he would be completely different from the kid that I knew, and I mean screaming, flipping tables, and many more in school, which was later found out to be a mix of autism and ADHD. And luckily for me and him, as well as a few of my old friends, he got that kind of mix that made him overly creepy and violent, even in the present if he didn't get what he wanted. But I only found this out in year 10 of school. When we were pretty young, I think around year 4 in school, I was told never to go near him by my parents. I later found out that it was because of his mother being overly obsessive and stalkish to my dad. She managed to get my dad fired by Harry's dad because she went through my dad's personal messages and DMs on his laptop during his lunchtime, and she found my dad and mom's personal messages. God knows what she saw in there. but I know she found my dad saying that I didn't enjoy working with Harry's dad. Unknown to her, it was because of the lack of clients that my dad got and not because of Harry's family. But this was enough for her to screenshot and then send it to her husband, Harry's dad, a client, and my dad, and worded the messages out to make my dad sound like a horrible person. So, this resulted in my dad losing his job and then moving his work to Eastley. I didn't talk to Harry for about a year after that, which is why I think it was around year 4 when that went down. But in year 6 of school, age 10 to 11, I found myself in a very close trio friend group with him and his best friend Isaac. I grew a crush on Isaac, and later on, we began dating, with Isaac's confession happening with Harry right next to us as we walked the marathon on our school's field. We spent every day at the park nearby playing manhunt and many more, and it was great. But in year 7, going into our teenage years, we completely grew apart. Harry moved schools for a couple of years and came back in year 9, but I never really saw him around at school at all, and I never talked to him, and me and Isaac eventually broke up in year 7, causing us to lose contact fully. The next time that I talked to Harry that I remember was during my year 10. I was the teacher's assistant to a group of kids and he was helping with fitness, so we came across each other during the kids' physical education class. We briefly caught up, and I was unfortunately in the I'll have a crush on the first person who pays me attention kind of phase, so for a brief moment, I thought that I liked him, but the feelings very quickly left when I found out that he was with one of my friends at that time. We then didn't speak again for a long time until him and my friend broke up, where she warned me about him. She told me that he had my profile pictures on WhatsApp and Instagram screenshotted, which she excused by saying that his power and volume buttons were easy to press and he often took accidental screenshots, and then he would leave the moment my friend asked him why he even pressed on my picture in the first place. At first, she thought he was cheating on her with me, which explained why she previously completely distanced herself from me. But I showed her mine and Harry's messages, showing our last conversation being in the summer holidays before year 7, and she thankfully believed me. She told me that he likely had something for me, and if he asked me out, to say no immediately with the reason that he often keeps pushing for every little thing and that the rumors were true. There were many rumors about him doing unbelievable things to people, which I won't go into detail about. For example, if someone said, "No, I can't hang out today," he would just turn up at their house trying to hang out with you because he added it to his schedule, and many other things which I can't mention on here. But basically, he doesn't believe in consent in most situations. He would pressure you in order to get what he wants. And thankfully, my friend got out in time, and we all collectively helped her through the messy breakup. At that time, I fully listened to my friend, but the conversation quickly left my mind as time passed. It was only until we had finished our GCSEs and we were starting out in college that he tried to reach out to me through Instagram since our numbers had changed. I unfortunately don't have the conversation anymore. I just looked for it and it was gone. But he started by telling me that he had a massive crush on me when I was in year 8, which already made me uncomfortable, but we moved the conversation to Snapchat since he added me somehow by search mid-conversation. I wish I took pictures of my screen, but he said very creepy things about how I looked, and it wasn't like overly mature, but just the random, "You're so pretty," which was enough to make me want to leave the conversation. He went into more detail saying that he had a massive crush on me in year 10 and 11 when he was still with my friend. He eventually asked me out with another wave of compliments, and before I could even reply, he messaged me again asking if I got on a certain bus number that got into college at that time. Since he lived nearby, I figured that he just saw me on it, and so I said yes. I also asked if he goes to college in the area, which he said yes, but then proceeded to tell me how he always saw me sitting at the back right seat that was one row in front of the back of the bus, and that he was too shy to say hi. I found this very creepy too, since I had never seen him once on the bus, and he was the type of guy that you can easily recognize. He was the type of guy that you would see at every anime convention with the fake katanas and etc. My seat allowed me to see everyone that got on the bus, and everyone sat behind me as I walked up to the seat and I never saw him, which made me feel like he was behind me the whole time. I spent the rest of my college years feeling like he was sat behind me watching me when I couldn't see him. Every time that I got on the bus, I would actively look out for him, but I never saw him. A few times, I would see his Snapchat start to message, but when I looked around me, it would stop and I would never see him on the bus. There was even a few times where he would say, "You're on your way to college," or "You look good today, I saw you on the bus." But when I would look around, he wasn't there, and I was the type of person who would look out the windows the whole journey, so I know that he wasn't outside. He eventually confessed his love again, and I rejected him, telling him that I was only looking for women. I wasn't aware that I was lesbian at that time. And months later, he tried again, pulling the same creepy messages, but getting more forward with every attempt, which this time I told him that I wasn't into him. He then tried again a month later, in which I told him that I was gay to see if it would stop him. Spoiler, it didn't, because he tried again a few weeks later. At that time, I told him that I liked someone, and that's when he started getting more violent. He tried one more time, in which I told him that I was in a relationship. The part that got violent with these constant messages was his responses to my rejections. The first time I rejected him, he sent me a photo of him crying. The second, he put the, okay. The third time he left me on red. The fourth time he snapped and then wrote, for fuck's sake, and didn't message me again for a while. And the last one, I quickly asked if he had found anyone, of which he said not yet, and we just left it there. Time went by and I didn't hear from him. I finished college and I started working full-time with my brother, who is now my manager. When Harry walked in late evening, getting an energy drink and some crisp. Instead of using our 4 self-services, he came up to me at the till, and he was the Harry that I knew. And I don't mean the violent, creepy one. I mean the casual, genuine guy that I once knew, and I reintroduced him to my brother since he knew of his family but didn't completely know Harry. During my break later that shift, Harry messaged me on Instagram again. It was the usual, "It was nice to see you again." And then he started talking about catching up, which I wasn't entirely happy about. The last thing that I want is me alone with him when I know he can't control himself after a drink or anytime past 8 p.m. So I just agreed but didn't proceed with it. I just said, yeah, we should, but didn't actually try to make a plan. The next day, we talked about our upcoming exam results that happened a few days ago and where we were individually going after class. I mentioned that I had work so I might buy myself a little something, just some casual small talk, when he hit me with a, Also, to be fair with you, I really liked you when you were going out with Isaac. And he said that, word for word. When I acted surprised, he texted again saying, "Yeah, it was like a massive one too." I didn't know what to say, so I just left him on read, and I haven't heard from him since. Even though it's only been a week, I know he will probably try again. Unfortunately, he has all my socials, multiple different cosplay accounts on social media, and he knows where I work or live, and we live very near to each other. So blocking him would only result in him trying to see me at work or somewhere in person. I'd much rather keep him on the screen than progress into in person since he's much more unpredictable. But I often find him stalking my accounts every night at around 10 p.m., which is the time that he sent all of those confessions. I know he will try again since nothing seems to get by him. I'm just thankful that I have my older brother at my work to keep me safe, just in case he showed his true colors at my work. Also, just to clarify, around 3/4 of this happened in person, and the other quarter happened online. So, to my very creepy childhood friend, for the love of God, let's not meet ever again. This is a story from when I was in 8th grade, or around that time. Honestly, I feel a bit stupid bringing it up here, but I have never told anyone, not family, not friends, and I just want to let it out somewhere. Up until high school, I usually went home with my friend, me walking and her trotting alongside on her bike. The walk home from school was in a relatively safe area. It was surrounded by other schools, supermarkets, churches, and little houses, so I never felt unsafe during that 10-minute walk. Not even on that one particular day when my friend had to ride ahead and I was left walking home alone. About halfway through my usual route, I suddenly had this unsettling feeling, like someone was watching me. I turned my head toward the street next to me, and I saw a car driving noticeably slower than it should have been. I actually looked it up on Google Maps out of curiosity, and the speed limit on that street was 30 kilometers per hour. But this car was moving so slowly that it looked like it was floating, like it was trying to match my pace. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, as I mentioned, there were schools and even a kindergarten in the area. I just assumed that it was a parent looking for a parking spot to pick up their kid. But things started to feel a bit creepy when the driver's window rolled down and the man behind the wheel looked directly at me. My memory of that moment has grown a bit fuzzy over time, but what I remember clearly is a man with short dark hair and an unsettling wide smile. It's that smile that stuck in my memory the most. It didn't fade for a second. The situation was bizarre and I couldn't fully process what was happening. So I just turned my head and I looked straight ahead. But to my shock, he kept staring. That same horrifying twisted smile plastered across his face, and he continued creeping along next to me, not speeding up at all. It felt like an eternity, and I didn't know what to do. Everything about the situation felt so surreal. I looked around to see if maybe he was looking at someone else, or if anyone else noticed how creepy this was. But I remember people just walking by normally, as if nothing strange was happening. My only comfort was that people were around at all, because by that point, I was getting genuinely scared and still struggling to register what was happening. I even thought about calling out to some guy walking in front of me, but I was too shy to say anything. Out of curiosity and fear, I started walking even slower. I could have sworn that I saw a flicker of disappointment on his face before he finally drove away. It all felt like a nightmare. I felt relieved watching the car disappear down the road. But then, as I reached the crossroad that led to the street that I lived on, he appeared again. He was back, driving just as slowly, window down. That same grotesque, unnatural smile stretched across his face. At that point, I was so stunned that I froze for a moment and I looked directly at him. I was trying to convince myself this was really happening and not something that I was making up. Maybe he was someone I knew, a friend from my parents, an old teacher trying to say hello. But no, this was real. This man was practically twisting his entire upper body to look at me through the car window, and I didn't know him. That smile was still unbearably creepy, and I had no idea what he wanted. Even worse, I realized something. From the direction he was now coming from, he must have driven in a circle around the block just to appear again on the street that I was about to enter. The street where I lived. My home was only a minute away. He was still driving well below 30 kilometers per hour, still saying nothing, still staring. As I stood there, trying to comprehend how real and dangerous this was, I felt a wave of fear wash over me. This creep could be trying to figure out where I lived. The street was lined with houses, but there wasn't a single other person around. Just him and me. All I wanted was for this nightmare to end. It was just the way he wasn't saying anything, just looking into my face, that scared the hell out of me. Thankfully, he never stopped the car completely. He just kept creeping along slowly. And eventually, he drove past far enough that I could finally cross the street. And at that point, I couldn't care about anything else. I told myself that if he came near me again, I would scream. I just ran straight home, and even while running, I could swear that he was still twisting his body to keep his eyes on me, still smiling that awful smile as he drove away. I was genuinely terrified, and this incident traumatized me. I knew that I hadn't imagined it. I kept checking, kept thinking about it over and over and over again. I was so scared that he would figure out where I lived that I refused to go to school or leave the house for days. I remained on edge for weeks, always half expecting him to show up again. I've thought about this moment so many times. Did he know me? Then why didn't he say anything? Why did he just smile like that? I even felt ashamed for wearing a skirt that day, thinking maybe it was just some creep lurking around. But no matter what, the whole situation was terrifying. And now I'm an adult, still living with my parents in the same place, though I have no reason to walk that old route anymore. I've never seen that man again, and I have never experienced anything as creepy or strange as that day. All that's been haunting me is his creepy smile, and how I will never quite understand how this horror movie story actually happened to me. I never told my parents or my friends, especially not my mom. She's always been very overprotective, and I knew that if I told her, she'd probably have started walking me to school again like I was a kindergartner. And my friends back then probably wouldn't have believed me anyway. So now that I've finally gotten this off my chest, creepy car guy, I'm glad that I never saw you again, and I hope that it stays that way. I genuinely hope that you never do this or something worse to any other kid, ever. My friend, 16, and I, 17 female, had been drinking at our friend's place, and we were pretty drunk. And at like 5 a.m., we finally decided to head home and took the first bus. However, when we climbed to the back of the bus, a guy, around 60 and male, with a goofy hat, immediately complimented my friend, saying that we were good looking. Without thinking too much, my friend thanked him. But as we sat down, the man joined us, sitting right next to me. He went on about how he was so drunk and then proceeded to ask my friend for a drink. My friend accepted the offer for €5. However, the man continued the questions as he was looking for the bill in his pockets. He asked for my friend's name and at which stop we would get off. He would repeat the question over and over again even though my friend told him that they were not comfortable with answering. And that's when we actually started to realize the true nature of the situation. Fortunately, that's also when some younger guys decided to step in. They told him to move and to stop bothering us. He was very resistant, even though he eventually obeyed. He gave the drink back to my friend and then went to sit elsewhere. This interaction caused a verbal fight between the man and the younger men. The younger men, who were also drunk, provoked the older man with some pretty bad insults. Even though the younger men had not handled the situation very well, we wished them good night and told them to take care when we hopped off the bus. Feeling relieved, we started walking towards a tram stop, waited for a bit, got on a tram, and then waited for it to leave. We both were low-key scared as hell still, but we tried to brush it off. But then, the worst case scenario happened. I saw the man walking towards the door of our tram. He got on, keeping an intense eye contact with us. This man had followed us to the tram. It couldn't have not been a coincidence because he entered so much later than us. He had noticed that we had left the bus and made the last-minute decision to follow us. He literally walked towards us, fists clenched, and I was sure that he was going to hit me, so I raised my hand to protect my head. He just stood there for a moment while I waited for the punch. Luckily, it never came. He sat down very close to us and started talking about how he would kill those men and that he knew where they live. With text messages, my friend and I decided to get off a stop earlier than we had planned to. And on the stop, we immediately started running until we reached a shady walkway where we could still see the stop. We stayed there silent for a moment until we were sure that the man didn't also get off. After that, we walked through the forest to make sure that he couldn't find us anymore. And finally, we made it back safely to my friend's place, but holy hell, was I scared. Hey everyone, I just need to get this off my chest. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I can't tell anymore. I, a 27-year-old female, works at a small 24-hour coffee shop on the night shift. I go from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I took it because the pay is a little higher, and honestly, I really need the money. Rent, bills, groceries, it all adds up, and switching to days would mean losing that extra bit that keeps me afloat. It's usually pretty calm. A few regulars, security guards, delivery drivers, students that are studying late, and they're nice enough. But then, there's this one guy. He started coming in maybe 2 months ago, mid-40s, plain looking, always in a black jacket no matter what. He orders the same thing every time. A large vanilla latte, extra hot. Yep, extra hot. never adds sugar, never changes his order. At first, I didn't think much of him. He was polite, kind of quiet, but normal. But lately, something about him just feels off. He lingers after finishing his drink, sometimes for an hour or more. He always sits at the same corner table where he can see me clearly, even when the rest of the shop is empty. He doesn't really do anything weird. He just watches. Sometimes he smiles if I glance his way, but it's this small, almost knowing smile that makes my stomach twist. Once, when I was taking the trash out at around 3 a.m., I came back in and he said, "Careful out there, it's dark." I laughed it off and I said, "Oh, yeah, I know." And then I went to the back room, but it stuck with me. He must have been watching me through the window the whole time. A week ago, he started coming in right before my shift starts, like he knows my schedule already. When I arrive, he's already sitting there with his cup, waiting. I don't know how he times it like that. But then last night, he made a comment that really unsettled me. I was making his drink and then he said, kind of casually, "You work hard. Must be tough walking home at this hour." It wasn't threatening exactly, but I never told him that I walk home. I've never even mentioned where I live or that I don't drive. I laughed awkwardly and I just said something like, "Oh yeah, it's not too bad." But I couldn't shake the feeling that he had been watching me after my shift too. Now, every time that I walk home, I feel like someone's behind me. I can't see anyone, but I keep hearing footsteps that stop when I stop. But it's probably just my nerves, right? I'm probably just imagining things because I'm being paranoid, right? I've told my manager, but he just said to keep things professional and not to assume the worst. It's not like the guy's done anything illegal. Not yet, anyway. He just makes me uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. I can't afford to switch shifts and I feel ridiculous calling the police over a hunch. But the other night when I was closing up, I look out the window and there he was, standing by the streetlight across the road, not moving and just watching the shop. It's probably nothing. Maybe he lives nearby. But every time the door chimes and I look up, I half expect it to be him again, smiling, waiting for his latte. Update. Hey everyone, I didn't expect so many people to respond to my last post. Thank you for all your advice, and though I haven't replied to everyone, I can assure you that I have read every single comment. I really appreciate how many of you said to trust my instincts. A lot of you suggested asking my manager to install cameras or to walk home with someone. I did ask about the cameras, and apparently, the ones outside don't even work. They've been waiting on maintenance for months. And as for walking home, I tried asking my coworker, but she drives and lives in the opposite direction. So I've been taking a longer route home. There's more streetlights, fewer alleys. It does add 10 minutes, but I feel safer. Anyway, about him. He's been in every single night since I posted. He still orders the same drink, still sits in the same spot, still doesn't really do anything too wrong, you know? But the weird part is that now he seems friendlier, like he's testing boundaries. He started making small talk, asking how my night's going, commenting on the weather, and stuff like that. Nothing that you can report someone for. But it's always delivered with this little pause, like he's waiting to see if I'll keep talking. Yesterday he said, "You must be getting tired of seeing me." I laughed politely and said, Not at all. Because what else am I supposed to say? Then he smiled and said, "Good. Routine's important." It doesn't really sound scary when I write it out, but the way that he said it, it made me feel like I'm part of his routine. Last night was the worst. He came in at around 9:50 p.m. before my shift even started. My coworker texted me that there was a guy waiting for me, and when I got there, he was already sitting down with a cup, meaning that he got someone else to make it that time, but still waited for me to arrive. I tried to focus on work, but I could feel his eyes on me the entire time. When he finally left at around 3 a.m., I thought that was it. But when I clocked out at 6, I saw something out of the corner of my eye across the street. Someone in a black jacket. I couldn't tell if it was him. He was just standing there near the bus stop like he was waiting for someone. I walked the long route home, trying not to look back. I told my manager again this morning, and he actually said, "You sure you're not reading too much into it?" So, yeah, that's where I'm at. Nothing's happened technically, but I've started keeping my phone on video recorder whenever I take out the trash just in case. Part of me feels guilty, like I'm being dramatic, but another part keeps hearing that line in my head. Routine's important. And I can't shake the feeling that this is only going to get worse. This happened a few years ago. It was a short encounter, but it definitely lasted. It was New Year's Eve 2018. I was about 9, my brother was 6. I was at a friend's house watching the fireworks from her back garden. We left around 10 p.m. to begin the 4-minute walk home. It was dark, but we were comfortable walking home as we had many times, and we could see my house. As we got closer, my brother stopped talking about fireworks and then asked, "Who's at our house?" I didn't think much of it, and I just said, "Mom, why?" He said, "Well, who's she outside with?" I, obviously confused, looked up and see 2 men leaning against our wall who look around late 30s. My neighbor at that time often threw parties, so I assumed that it was someone from her house. Gave him a simple "I don't know," took his hand, and then continued walking. We got about 20 foot from my house when they stood up and began walking towards us, barking. I grabbed my brother and I ran back with him down the street. At the end of my street, there was a ginnel leading to the back gardens. I crossed over the street and hid behind the end of the house with my brother, and then I called my mom. Yes, I was 9 with a phone. She answered and then started having a go at me. She assumed that I was joking and went to the front door expecting no one to be there. I heard the door open and it was silent for a few seconds. I then heard her yelling, "What the fuck are you doing sat on my wall?" I then heard frantic apologies coming down the phone and then her yelling again, "And why the fuck are you barking and chasing my children?" She later said that they apologized and ran down an opposite street. My brother was too scared to move and whatever adrenaline I had earlier was gone and I couldn't carry him anymore. We asked around and no one saw anyone, and our curfew was moved from 8 p.m. She said that they didn't seem drunk, but they didn't stick around enough for her to be sure. Shortly after, I was in the same backings with a friend, around 7. The area had back gardens, garages, and a circular road around it. We were sat in an elderly neighbor's garage when a fully tinted van came in. We ignored it, assuming it was here to fix something, and after ignoring it, we completely forgot about it and began skipping in the road. But the van began driving behind us. It chased us 3 times behind the backings. At the third time, we had the bright idea to leave the backings and close the gate behind us to avoid getting chased. I mentioned it, but it was brushed off, and I never really mentioned it again. But I imagined that it could be connected. But we moved shortly after. After this, and honestly, still now, my brother suffers with severe anxiety when it comes to going anywhere alone. But it's gotten a lot better in recent years. I used to do my grocery shopping late at night. It was quieter that way. There were no lines, no crying kids, no one standing in front of the freezer doors for 10 minutes just trying to decide on what ice cream they would get. For some background, I live alone and I work from home, so running errands at around 10 or 11 p.m. was normal for me. I always went to this 24-hour store that was open. It was small, but it was clean. It had those bright white lights that make everything feel too sharp. There was usually only one cashier working, and maybe 2 or 3 other customers wandering around. It always felt safe though, almost peaceful in a very weird way. Anyway, the first time that I noticed him, it didn't even register as strange. To describe him, he was tall, maybe mid-30s, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans. He looked like any other person just trying to grab groceries before bed, and I passed him a few times. We did that awkward aisle dance when you're both trying to move around each other. I smiled a little. He didn't smile back, but that's okay, he just kept walking. I didn't think about it again until a few nights later. It was almost midnight and I'd run out of coffee, so I stopped by the store again. It was mostly empty, just the hum of the refrigerators and the soft pop music playing from the ceiling speakers. I turned into the baking aisle, and there he was. The same gray hoodie, same jeans, same blank face. He was just standing near the end of the aisle, not looking at anything in particular. I thought maybe I was imagining it. It's not like I own the store. People are allowed to shop whenever they want. But something about how still he was made my stomach twist a little. He didn't have a cart or basket, and his hands were in his pockets. So I just grabbed what I needed and I left pretty quickly that night. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing him more often. It wasn't every single time, of course, but it was often enough that it became impossible to ignore. No matter what time I went, 10 p.m., 1 a.m., even once at around 3 a.m., he was there. He was always alone, always empty-handed. Sometimes he would be near the entrance, pretending to look at the magazines. Sometimes he would be in the produce section, staring down at his phone, but never scrolling. Once I even caught him just standing near the self-checkout area, facing the doors. He never looked directly at me, but I always knew that he knew that I was there. It was a strange kind of awareness when someone doesn't make eye contact but still seems to track your movements. To be honest, I really don't know how to explain it properly. One night, I decided to test it. I took a basket and I started walking in a random order: frozen foods first, then cleaning supplies, then back to the produce. And each time that I turned down a new aisle, I would catch a glimpse of him at the other end, just pretending to look at something. He wasn't following me closely, but he was everywhere I went. The weirdest part was that I never saw him fully check out. I'd pay, walk out to the parking lot, and glance back through the glass doors, and he would still be inside. No groceries, no cart, no bags, just standing there. I told myself that he may be an employee off shift, or someone waiting for a friend, or even just another night owl with insomnia. I tried to rationalize it every single time, but that little voice in the back of my head kept whispering that something was off about this guy. The night that I finally stopped going there started like any other. I had worked late that night, and I then realized that I was out of dish soap, so I headed to the store at around 11:30 p.m. This time it was raining hard, the kind that makes the streetlights look blurry. When I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed that there were only two cars, mine and another, and it was parked way off to the side near the edge of the lot. Inside the store was completely empty except for the cashier. I grabbed a basket, hurried through the aisles, and I tried not to look around too much. Still, when I turned the corner near the dairy section, I saw him again. Same hoodie, same blank face, just standing near the milk fridge. This time, I didn't look away. I watched him for a few seconds, waiting for him to move or pretend to shop, but he didn't. He just stayed there, eyes low like he was waiting for something. I felt that creeping heat crawl up my neck, the kind that makes your whole body tense before your brain even knows why. I left the basket right there, and I walked straight to the front. I tried to act casual, but my hands were shaking when I took my keys out of my pocket. And when I got outside, the rain had stopped and the parking lot was still empty, except for my car and that same car parked far away. It was an older model sedan, dark colored, maybe navy blue or black. The headlights weren't on, but I could tell that someone was sitting inside. I didn't look too closely. I just got into my car, locked my doors, and I started the engine. As I was backing out, I saw movement in my rearview mirror. The store doors opened and the man stepped outside. He wasn't running or hurrying, he was just walking, like he knew where I was going to go next. I drove home faster than I should have, and the whole time I kept checking my mirrors, waiting to see those headlights behind me. But luckily, no one followed. For the next few days, I couldn't shake it. I told myself that I was overreacting, but something deep down told me not to go back to that store. I switched to a different store across town, one that closed at 10 p.m., and I started shopping earlier in the evenings when more people were around. About 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through a local news page on Facebook and a headline caught my eye. Man arrested after trespassing at a local 24-hour grocery store. The post said that security had been receiving complaints for months about a man loitering in the aisles late at night, never buying anything, just watching people come and go. When the police questioned him, they found a set of house keys on him that didn't belong to him and a folded piece of paper with several license plate numbers written down. I didn't have to read further to know one of those numbers was probably mine, and I never went back to that store again. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure if the whole thing could be considered stalking, but that's what my gut feeling is telling me, and I really don't want to experience that again. And now, whenever I have to run errands after dark, I park under the brightest light that I can find, and I make sure to look around before getting out, because the thing is, you never really know when someone has decided to make a routine part of your life into a routine part of theirs. Hey everyone, this is your creepy sister. Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared because your fear feeds me.